right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Welcome to the Princeton Council meeting of December 16th, 2019, and please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first on our agenda tonight is several sets of minutes from September 16th, 2019, the closed and open sessions, September 23rd, the closed and open sessions, and October 10th, 2019. Are there any corrections to the minutes, or is there a motion to approve in block?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Fraga, seconded by Ms. Krumiller. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Any opposed? Resolutions passed unanimously, and I want to thank the minutes. What did I just say? Oh, sorry. The minutes passed unanimously. I want to thank the clerk, and now we'll move on to announcements, and I'll start on my right with Ms. Niedergang for any announcements.
No announcements.
Mr. Cohen, any
No
announcements? Mr. Quinn, Ms. Fraga?
I actually do feel the need to make this announcement, though I wasn't planning to. For those who are not already aware, today something historic happened in New Jersey. The legislation was passed, or two. One was that would extend the voting rights to those who are on parole and probation. And the second, yes. And the second one is legislation that will expand access to driver's licenses to everyone, regardless of immigration status. To say that this will greatly improve the quality of life to many in New Jersey, including in our own community, is an understatement. For those of us who take things for granted, including myself, don't really recognize the impact it has had for many in our community who are either not able to get to where they need to go, to even including to participate in their children's after-school activities, but also to drive with fear on our roads because of necessity. From what I understand, the governor had already indicated that once it reaches his desk, he will sign it. So I feel that is something, now that it has passed, the legislature is something to celebrate. And so it is we become the 15th state in the nation to join, to be humane and provide access to driver's license to everyone. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Mr. Williams?
You can mention it.
Oh, well, I don't want to steal your thunder, Madam Chair.
Please.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to announce that tomorrow at 9 a.m., Leticia Fraga, my colleague to the right, will be chairing the first of many meetings to come to prepare for the 2020 census. She will be chairing the Complete Count Committee, it's called. We want to make sure that we get as many people to participate in the census, particularly in those communities that are more vulnerable and that we've seen in the past have been undercounted. And we want to make sure, because of course, this count determines how much money we get as far as like congressional funding, et cetera. So it's extremely important. So I didn't want to steal, Madam.
No, and not to mention, I think most folks are familiar with the census,
Right.
but many of us, until we became involved, didn't realize just what an impact it has on our own community, including funding for school lunches.
That's correct.
Not to mention representation in government.
Right. I want to thank my colleague, Councilwoman Fraga, for chairing that committee.
Great, thank you. And I just have a couple additional announcements. The first is there's going to be a special meeting of the Princeton Council this Wednesday here in this room at 7:30 p.m. Dedicated to affordable housing, and the council will be voting on the settlement agreement for our affordable housing plan, so I encourage all of you to come back for that. Also this Friday, December 20th, I'll be holding my monthly Meet the Mayor open office hours in the Princeton Public Library lobby from 8:30 to 10 a.m. And finally, there will be the annual council reorganization meeting on Thursday, January 2nd at 5 p.m., which will feature the swearing in of our two new councilwomen, Michelle Perrin-Lambros and Mia Sachs, who are hiding in the back tonight, but will soon be on the hot seat up here. So we're excited to welcome you. Okay, are there any staff announcements? Nope. Okay, so we'll move on then to comments from the public for items that are not on the agenda. And we do have an extensive list for people who signed up ahead of the meeting. So we'll start with the sign-up list and if there's anybody else who wants to speak on an item that's not already on the agenda who didn't sign up, we'll take you after we've gone through everybody who has signed up. So we'll start with Suzanne Roth.
Hi. I'm here today because of the new construction at 159 Snowden Lane. Ever since they started construction and specifically laying the foundation at 159 Snowden, there have been serious water abatement issues, specifically water streaming down Snowden. We had to call the police for assistance this summer because the water was actually streaming down our driveways into our properties, and we had to sandbag. Since that time, on November 27th, the day before Thanksgiving, we were awakened at 6:55 to have the builder tearing apart our driveway to lay a drainage pipe. This affected specifically properties 151 Snowden and 141 Snowden. Other residents are supporting me in this statement. They just can't be here tonight. We thought that laying this drainage pipe that significantly damaged our driveways and our grass and our properties would solve the situation, but it's just worse. As of this weekend and specifically today, they have been running a pipe from the back of 159 Snowden Lane, just with water pouring out of that property that's flowing down into, it's affecting not only the Snowden Lane properties, but the Clover Lane properties. And I can say that 141 and 151 are now, our backyards are now ponds. I've been in touch with Jack West. He has put into place some temporary fixes, mainly a cold patch of our driveway and rerouting the pipe from the back to the front. So now it's going into the sewer again. But I would like some accountability and some assurance. What Jack West told me today is that they cannot do any permanent fixes until the spring. This 159 Snowden property is one of, the get-rich-quick flip properties, which has like a phantom owner and who hired a local builder. So what is the accountability that these permanent fixes will be made to the drainage system that is now pouring into our properties? Like I said, Jack West said that they could do a permanent fix in the spring, but by then the property could be sold. And even though it only has a temporary CO or certificate of occupancy, I want to know, the property is 159 Snowden is literally flooding the neighboring properties.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and I'm very sorry that you're going through this. Sounds horrible. And I guess, I don't know what we can hold up a CO for. I mean, it seems like the project isn't finished if they haven't finished the stormwater parts of it, but I want to just check and see if that's something that we can, okay.
Okay, because it was really flooding our properties, they did reroute the pipe, like I said, into the street and sewer. And Jack says someone's going to be there tomorrow to actually have this outflow hose pipe go into the drainage pipe that they actually installed into the street. I don't know why it wasn't done in the first place. But again, it's just a temporary fix, and it sounds like very quick fix. Just get it done before the weather gets bad in the holidays. And
Right. So I'll personally follow up with Jack tomorrow, and
you.
we'll try to figure out what the process would be to give you some assurance. I don't want to say something tonight that I
understand.
can't back
I
up. So
understand. Okay.
we'll get more information
Okay.
tomorrow morning. Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Next is Lisa Tang, or Lisa Sung.
Hi, I'm Lisa Tang Sung. I would like to talk about a Princeton digital playground. A digital playground is a child-friendly internet for Princeton. We want this because the full-scale internet is full of scams, disturbing images, and explicit things. A digital playground will not have those things. I suggest all the kids K through 7 will use the digital playground, and it will be a great way to benefit all the children and tweens in Princeton. Princeton TV knows how to install a digital playground, by the way. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. That was a great job. George McCall? Oh, McCall. Oh, you didn't? Okay. I'll fill in the rest of the name.
I didn't spell that. Thank you, Lisa. I've watched Lisa grow up over the years, and she's always welcome at Princeton TV. When I first got to Princeton TV, I was hired by the borough, and I won't make this too long. I'm not going to do the whole life story, but and I was hired by the borough to manage Princeton TV. But shortly after that, the town formed a nonprofit, Princeton Community Television, and the sole purpose of the nonprofit was to manage the facilities for the town. And I think we've done a really, really good job of doing that. It's far exceeded my expectations. The franchise fees that we have received, I feel like we've been very, very responsible with. We've used those franchise fees to invest into the community. During this whole process of negotiating a contract with the town, I have heard stuff where people are saying, why are they coming in? They're not from Princeton and stuff like that. Well, all the rules, policies, or bylaws, everything were written by town-appointed people, and I feel like we've followed all those rules to the T. And since this is the season of giving thanks, I just want to thank my board that has really put in a lot of hours, and we've had many, many meetings over the last 9 months, and it's funny because they're the ones who have put in the work. All the town-appointed board members split once the town started asking us to start raising more money. So I feel like hopefully 2020 will be a much better year. Thank you.
Thank you. And sorry, I got the order wrong. Next is actually Janet Wolonitz.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Janet Wolonitz. Can you hear me? Okay. And speak a little closer. Thank you. I'm Janet Wolonitz, and I'm a resident of Princeton. And I'd like to just mention a brief history of Princeton Community Television. The rationale for public broadcasting was mandated by the FCC in 1934, because at that time, as of now, it realized that a democracy needs to hear a variety of voices, and that the media, commercial media at the time, had limited participation of communities and individuals. The Act is updated periodically to add new provisions governing new communication technologies such as cable TV. From 1970 to the mid-80s, cable television stations had to provide, by FCC regulations, community access television with the following things. They had to maintain a television production studio so residents could gather to produce programs in real time or to be aired later on video, provide equipment and training, and set aside a segment of the broadcast spectrums assigned to them for community access broadcasting. In the early 1980s, Jim Kilgore, the owner and publisher of Princeton Packet and HomeLink Cable Company, joined and brought cable television to Princeton. A franchise contract lasting 10 years between the cable company and the government was signed, and TV 30 was launched. I have to continue. Okay. Buyouts led to the changes of the company serving Princeton. HomeLink became RCN, RCN became Patriot, and Patriot Committee acquired, HomeLink became acquired RCN, was acquired by RCN, and Patriot Cable acquired RCN. When Patriot began the cable provider in Princeton, the franchise agreement was ready for renewal. By then, public access channels were no longer mandated by federal law. Rather, public access stations were a right given to the financing authority, which it could choose to exercise. The government of Princeton chose to exercise that right in the negotiations and wanted to continue serving the public access with a studio, training, and spectrum stage. Patriot offered to provide only equipment. The renewal process was at a standstill. After hours of negotiation, Ann Reeves, myself, and Bill Jones, the VP of Patriot, reached an agreement. Patriot would provide a smaller studio, equipment, and training, and Ann Reeves offered space at the Arts Council. We're fortunate today to have Patriot Community Television and Media Center. It offers individuals, groups, the underserved, and representatives, organizations the opportunity to gather and produce programs from civil discourse through cultural programming. The importance of PCTV is that it is a facility where people can gather. Using new technologies, including digital, PCTV has expanded the reach of its delivery beyond Princeton to the entire state of New Jersey and beyond. The portion of the spectrum used for broadcasting Princeton Community Access does not generate profits for the cable company. If PCTV ceases operation, that portion of the spectrum reverts back to the cable company and will be used for commercial purposes to increase their profits. The chances that the spectrum space will revert back to a community access station is slim to none. PCTV is a model of a local newspaper. It provides democratic participation in an environment of corporate dominance that essentially drowns out the public's voice on matters that affect their public lives. The importance of community access TV should be determined by the variety of voices that are heard and seen. Having PCTV go dark is a loss to our community now, a loss to future generations, and a loss to our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. There are a lot of people who would like to speak tonight, and this is for a lot of people want to speak about PCTV, and we understand this is an important issue, but it's actually not on our agenda. So I would just ask that if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes because of the volume of people, it'll let us hear from you and hear from everybody in the room who wants to speak, and also let us do our business tonight. So next up is Sharon Murray.
Hello, good evening. I am the station manager at Princeton TV at 1 Monument Drive. And I just wanted to share a story with you. 2 people came to Princeton TV without any prior knowledge of production. They knew nothing. And together they started a television show. One was a Princeton resident. I don't think either of them realized how far they would go. They ended up winning the 2017 documentary category at Nassau Film Festival. Now, the subject that they chose to highlight was Centurion Ministries, which I'm sure you're probably aware helps to free wrongly incarcerated people from prison. And the main subject of the documentary was, blanking on his name. The main subject he was just nominated as CNN Hero of the Year. Now, if that's not a great example of community building, I don't know what is. And I want to invite you to watch that documentary tomorrow at 8 o'clock on Princeton TV. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan Goldstein.
Hello, I'm Joan Goldstein, Dr. Joan Goldstein. I'm a host and producer of a show called Backstory with Joan Goldstein. I've been doing it probably for 12 or maybe 13 years now. One of the things I try to look at, because I am a sociologist, is what's happening in our community, what's happening in our society that people need to understand. And the people that I bring on my show are participating in that world. The show that's coming up quite soon is with Reverend Ed McEwen and Reverend Ballmer, both of whom are working with prisons and people coming out of prison and helping them to find jobs. And that's on my current show that will probably be up late December. I've also had a show just now on the conflict over the Westminster Choir College and its placement or removal from Princeton. And this is very powerful stuff. This is our world. This is what our town is like, and it's a beautiful town. It's a wonderful town. And the newspapers do an excellent job, but there's something about TV letting people speak for themselves that is powerful and important. So I'm here to say, and also working with George, he is the best professional I've ever worked with, and I've been on other TV. I've been on national TV. And George is the most professional man I know and has helped me many times. And I simply am saying then, please, think about it. Think about how important this TV station is to this community who wants to know what's going on in this community. So please, support us.
Next is Reverend Ballmer.
Thank you. I think some of you know I'm the director of the Coalition for Peace Action. I've been that for a little over 38 years now. And during that time, I have found Princeton Community TV to be an invaluable resource. They have videotaped many of our events. And they not only broadcast it then on their station, but those are able to be put on as links on our website. So it helps us reach a much wider audience. Just a few examples come to mind. The tape of Noam Chomsky speaking at one of our conferences was viewed by over 50,000 people, the video of that. I started up a podcast series with the support of Princeton TV earlier this year. The very first podcast was listened to by over 11,000 people. So I think very, very highly of Princeton TV as a critical community resource that helps people that are in the Princeton area get our message out and help educate a wide audience. I hope you'll do everything you can to keep it at full functionality. It does a great job. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Next is Kip Cherry.
Kip Cherry, 24 Dempsey Avenue. I want to talk about the critical importance of maintaining Princeton Community TV's free public access. PCTV is a Princeton jewel in jeopardy. It broadcasts on Comcast Channel 30 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. Many people don't fully appreciate its importance. It is a key source of information about the Princeton community and issues it faces. We don't have a WHYY in Princeton. Without public access, we are limiting our options to be well informed. Public access was set up in Princeton in return for the use of the public right-of-way by cable television. It was agreed that cable television would pay a rental fee or a franchise fee, and that free public and governmental access channels would be supported by this fee. There was never an intention to spin PCTV off and have it depend on charges for services or private donations. The rental fees we are already paying as cable users in our cable bill specifically pay for these services. PCTV has cameras, studio for filming shows, trained volunteers to help develop programming, and a stable of volunteer show hosts and producers. It has grown from producing 200 shows per year to 650. At the same time, while having great free programming, PCTV should be doing more. Mayor Marchand used to host a television show called Meet the Mayor Show. Superintendent Wilson used to be on Princeton TV regularly. Members of the council and the school board used to be on often. I'm concerned that our elected officials are not taking full advantage of public access through PCTV paid for by cable users, not by taxpayers. Rather than remove the funding PCTV has relied on, we need to make sure our elected officials are there at the station walking us through the many issues we face. Sunshine is a good thing. Princeton has been known for its open democracy. Its willingness to look at issues from all sides, an attribute that sets us apart from other towns. We shouldn't lose this. I'd like to see more shows that look further at parking solutions, at municipal school board and county budgets, that examine pros and cons for increasing density, that look at the importance of a rail connection to the Northeast Corridor, that takes a hard look at the university master plan, etc. All subjects that could benefit from further analysis, discussion, and openness before becoming public controversies, going before council, and all without requiring the public to attend meetings that eat up time they don't have and forcing them even more to come out into difficult weather. I hope that the current impasse can be resolved and that our town will continue to support PCTV's free public access by passing through much of the cable fees as originally intended. The fact is that if we don't continue to direct cable fees to support public access, the cable industry has begun to say that then maybe the industry should not be paying these fees anymore. Princeton has always been known for its public discussion and the expertise of its citizenry. Let's not shut the door on one of the key avenues of community discourse, but instead expand and promote the programming. I urge Princeton Council to continue working out an agreement with PCTV. The public good cannot be privatized. Thank you very much.
Next is, I'm going to read off three names. If you just all come up and it'll let us hear from people more quickly, so we don't have as much time in between speakers. So Alfreda Richardson, John D. Warwick, and Bob Kierans, I think. And if you could please state your name and also your address when you come and speak. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alfreda Richardson, and I'm a producer at Princeton Community Television, His Glorious Productions. I have been a producer at Princeton Television for about 5 years, and I have been trained by Sharon and George, and they are the epitome of professionalism. And in my program, the reason why we need to keep Princeton Community Television thriving, not only in 2019, but to future generations, is because I was able to bring forth a relevant program of breast cancer survivor. She was able to come and tell her story, how she was healed of breast cancer. And also we were able to tell the story also that men need to get checked out for that disease as well. And also we were able to talk about anti-human trafficking that occurs in our community. Without Princeton Community Television, we would not be able to share this relevant information that is so critical and pertinent to our society. We know that human trafficking is across this world, is out of control. But in order for us we need that platform in order to bring to our local community the news. They need to be able to take action, what they can do. But we need your support in order to do that. So I just want to thank you very much for your time. So we want to keep Princeton Community Television thriving.
Thank you. John Warwick, and then next is Bob Cairns.
Thank you for allowing us to speak here today and listen. My story's a little different. I don't have a show, but I've been a member of the station for a number of years, and I was really impressed all along with how the station is run. And George and Sharon are increasingly, I mean, they just do everything possible. And I know these two people put more hours in than they're showing on the books because they seem to have a love of community. And I think that's the question you have to ask here that I'm hearing. Let's say tomorrow there's no more station. I mean, this is an investment where Princeton gets a lot of leverage to control an asset. Like someone who's buying homes wants to buy $1 million home where they can take $200,000 and leverage it to pay for these mortgages. You have people running something very, very well. They're honest people. They try to help everyone. For myself, I'm a 71-year-old disabled veteran. I find that coming here is almost kind of therapeutic. There's other disabled veterans that are members of the station that have benefited from the friendships that go on beyond the stations. Many of these people in back of me, maybe they don't see each other because they're doing the station, but they get together because it's community. This is all about community. I was raised, I grew up in Lawrenceville, and my sister graduated from Princeton High School, which to this day, she's a 77-year-old registered nurse. Princeton's a special place, a really special place. There's a lot of history here, and I would hate to think that, 50 years from now, as you read the history, that this distinguished body here said, like, no way, we're not supporting that anymore. This is just as much the town station as anyone's. We're all part of it, even if you're not a member. It's a great station. The people are diverse. I think they help a lot of people. There's, like, a teacher has no idea where their influence starts and begins. And so it's hard to clarify the power that these people have in back of me. I don't even think they think about it. Everyone here is sort of like media-minded, trying to serve the community. You're trying to serve the community. Well, I'd like you to continue that, to serve the community, by serving us and supporting us in the future and be part of something special that very few towns can talk about. When you look at how the programming reaches the world. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
It wasn't a planned speech.
Okay.
I just came up here, I listened to everyone, and I said what needs to be said. So I don't
Thank
have
you very much.
statistics, I don't have any of that.
Thank you. Could you, sorry, can you spell your last name and then your address for the record?
Kearns.
And then your address for the record, too?
I live just across the bridge in Bristol, in Pennsylvania. Okay, good, go. I think at the bottom of this whole story is it really comes down to dollars and cents. You've made an investment, and you expect a return on that investment, and maybe for some reason that's been clouded, or you're not seeing the return on that investment that you expect. I would submit to you that if you listen to the stories, the passion, the diverse attitudes, and the communication skills of the people that are standing before you, and you can see the emotion in their voice and the power in what they have to say, that is certainly a valuable return on investment in a democratic forum, something that there are fewer and fewer ways to have that delivered to the community. It's controlled. People are running into Facebook and this, that, and all the other thing, and many of these things are manipulated and difficult, but this is a very pure, very down-to-earth, where the rubber meets the road method of communication, where people come in and make an effort, and they're guided to proficiency by a very talented technical staff. I would suggest to you that continued investment will continue to expand on that return in the future, and would expect that folks such as yourself are obviously concerned with issues of diversity and community advancement would be in favor of supporting that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right, it's 10 of 8, and we haven't gotten to any of the items on our agenda yet. So my recommendation would be, as we hear another 10 minutes of public comment, we can move up the resolution pertaining to PCTV, and then vote on that. So people here who want to have the satisfaction of hearing the vote on that can be here, and then we'll continue public comment at the end of the meeting for those who haven't gotten a chance yet, just because I'm worried we're going to run out of time. So next up is Jane Lynn Britton.
Thank you. My name is Jane Lynn Britton, and I'm the mother of an 18-year-old son with autism. My show is Navigate Autism with Jane Lynn. About 10 years ago, I left the job that I loved to homeschool my son because he had gone so deeply within inside himself, he didn't even know I was in the same room. And that wasn't an option for me. After 8 years and 20,000 hours of working one-on-one with him in a playroom and teaching 30 people to do the same thing, he learned to look at me, have a connection, we have a great relationship. He's back in school, thriving. When he went back to school, all I wanted to do was find a credible platform that I could share what I had learned, and that was Princeton TV. So through my show, Navigate Autism with Jane Lynn, we are able to reach parents of children with autism and give them valuable resources as well as tips and hints of what they can do for their children. There's so many things that Princeton TV does, but I'm just going to name 3 that stand out in my mind. Number 1, raising awareness for autism. Statistically, 1 in 59 children each year in the United States are diagnosed with autism. In New Jersey, it's 1 in 35. Through Navigate Autism, we're able to reach those parents and give them hope, confidence, and quick and easy tips. In each show, I tell them one thing they can do right now to help their child with autism, no matter who you are, where you are, what your background is. And that builds hope and helps the family. Secondly, we're helping local businesses. I had a provider come on my show. Twice they had offered a free workshop for parents of children with autism. No one came. 3 weeks after coming on my show and talking about the workshop, 25 people signed up and multiple parents became clients or patients. So their business is thriving. And number 3, most of my guests are not from this area. They're from across the United States, across the world, and they're always asking me about Princeton. They want to come here, so this is an opportunity to spotlight Princeton as a destination of choice. One example, one of my therapists has developed a groundbreaking therapy that's helping many, many children. She's teaching nurses, but she's also teaching parents. She lives in New Hampshire. Several New Jersey viewers called her to say, how can we learn this for our kids? She said, I'd like to go to Princeton and teach you. We're bringing her to Princeton and bringing all the parents around New Jersey here to learn that therapy to help their children. So again, there's many things Princeton TV can do for us. I hope that we can continue to support them to be the thought leader, the educational resource, as well as spotlighting Princeton as a destination of choice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Crystal Shivel. You're next, Crystal. You have to be at the mic so people can hear you who are listening from home.
Area. The League needs Princeton TV to videotape and broadcast our candidates' forums. Mayor Lempert and others on council have assured me that if Princeton TV closes, they will help the League find another videographer. I'm grateful for your concern and support, but will other videographers charge for their services? The League has no money. More importantly, will voters be able to distinguish one candidate from another on the video? For example, recent videotapes of Princeton Council meetings do not allow viewers to see faces clearly, so it's difficult to tell, and sometimes impossible to tell, who is speaking. It's not very fair to the candidates. By contrast, George zooms in as each candidate speaks, later adds the name of the candidate, the address of her website. We see the face, know the name, and get a sense of the personality. All are important when choosing a candidate for public office. And to achieve this, George, of course, needs the equipment at Princeton TV. The League needs the studio, too. When candidates finally agree on a date, it may be too late to book one of the free venues like Monument Maine or this room. That's when the studio is a lifesaver. It's most likely able to be available sometime. Voters rely on Princeton Community TV. The Princeton Board of Education Forum ranked as the 4th most watched program on Princeton TV in October. Vimeo records show that 3,055 voters at least looked at the video, 83 viewed it all, and the average time for watching was 42%. The Princeton Council Forum was videotaped in the studio and posted on October 24th. It was also broadcast and within a week became the 7th most watched program for October and the 6th most watched for November. 1,156 voters at least looked at the video, 101 viewed it all, and the average time watched was 48%. Again, given that there were only 12 days before the election, those numbers show that voters do care. The League of Women Voters depends on Princeton TV and urges council to support it. Please use the funds initially intended for public access television to make sure that Princeton Community TV continues the public service it provides for voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda Dunn.
I'd just like to say a few words. My name is Brenda Dunn. I live on North Harrison Street. And I run a small nonprofit organization which has been benefited immensely from the technological advice, the services, and the human support and guidance we've gotten from community TV. But what I really want to point out is the critical word here is community. This organization brings together different aspects of our community and takes it out of the realm of being a bunch of diverse people and organizations and interests and draws them together in a shared vision. And we need that. Princeton needs that dearly. I've been living in Princeton for over 40 years, and I have seen over that time I can't say disintegration, but a loosening of the community ties that were here and pulled this town together when I first came. We need to get that back. So please support the Princeton Community TV in order to support the Princeton community. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final speaker will be Alex Merchant.
Hi, hello. I am here to make a comment in support of the traffic calming plan that is being considered. Between 1990 and 2009, pedestrian deaths and traffic crashes fell dramatically, from 6,482 to 4,109. Since 2009, unfortunately, there's been a complete reversal of that trend. Pedestrian deaths have surged 53% from 2009 to 2018, according to US DOT data. This surge in pedestrian deaths is matched by a surge in SUV and light truck sales and cell phone use, which is up 121% and 446% respectively, according to the Governor's Highway Safety Association. This is a nationwide trend, and there's little evidence that it's going to abate. The federal government is not stepping into its role as a regulator here, and it's really imperative that local government act. I think the council is to be commended for considering the traffic calming plan, but it also must take robust action. I ride my bike 2.5 miles a day, 5 to 7 days a week, including taking my son to daycare at the YWCA. Adding a shared bike pedestrian path to the Paul Robeson, Wiggins, Hamilton corridor would benefit many YWCA parents, quite a few of whom bike or walk their children to school. Attending an evening council meeting is very challenging for young parents. My son is 2 years old. The people I see walking and cycling are high school students, parents with children, working class men and women working in restaurants and other establishments in downtown Princeton, and other community members. It's very challenging for many of these people to come to an evening council meeting. So it's very important that the council take action to address this issue. So I'm really asking very forcefully for the council not only to adopt the traffic calming plan, but to fund it sufficiently so that these projects can happen in a timely fashion. The Paul Robeson, Hamilton, Wiggins corridor would affect me personally, but there are also a number of other projects that are being considered. So I commend that it's being considered, but consideration is not enough. It needs to be adopted, and it also needs to be generously funded so that these projects can happen as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so my recommendation would be that we amend the agenda to bump up Resolution 19388, which is resolution authorizing PCTV to provide videotaping and televising services rendered January 1st, 2019 to March 27th, 2019, in the total amount of $56,962. We'll vote on that now if there's an agreement to amend the agenda to bump that resolution up. I wanted to give a little bit of information about PCTV, and then we'll open up the public comment again after we get through our agenda, just so we can get some of our business done that we were planning for tonight. So I will start by asking if there's a motion to amend the agenda to move up Resolution 19388 for consideration. Moved by Mr. Quinn.
Second.
And seconded by Ms. Niedergang. All in favor of amending the agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. So just for people who might be watching at home, I know there's a lot of people in this room who are knowledgeable about PCTV. If you're watching this show right now, you're watching on the dedicated government channel that's run by the municipality that airs council, planning, and zoning board meetings. This channel is different than PCTV. There is also a school district channel. Again, that channel is separate from PCTV. PCTV is a nonprofit, and they put on public access programming for the community. We've heard a little bit about the background of funding for PCTV. The amount of pass-through money through the town of cable franchise fees has been substantial, about $250,000 a year. And although originally intended to support local broadcasting when this funding arrangement began decades ago, state law now allows these fees to be fully retained by municipalities for taxpayer relief. And the vast majority of municipalities in New Jersey use this money to support their budget, and very few support local stations. And that's for a lot of reasons, but one of them I think is because we're all facing budget challenges. We have to make difficult decisions. For comparison, I just want to say there's a lot, we're really lucky in this town to have a lot of really great nonprofits. They all do amazing, important work for the community. One of them is Sustainable Princeton. They just helped the town put out a climate action plan. They work really hard for this town. Anybody who lives in Princeton knows Sustainable Princeton and the value they provide for this community. The town previously have been giving upwards of $250,000 a year to Princeton Community Television. Sustainable Princeton, in contrast, gets about $30,000 a year. And I would say that most of the nonprofits in Princeton are funded privately, not through municipal, either pass-through funds or tax dollars, and we just don't have the capacity in general to be supporting nonprofits that way from the municipal government. In 2015, the municipality negotiated a 4-year contract with PCTV with the amount of funding reducing each year. And the conversations that were had at the time was to encourage PCTV to do more private fundraising so it would be better positioned when this day came. In 2018, the municipality met numerous times with PCTV, and I don't want to get into the details of what happened in negotiations. I think everybody knew that, unfortunately, they broke down, and we decided to move on from there. I will say that it's true that nearly every other municipality in the state of New Jersey were very rare in funding a public access station. And I think you'll see that the station here has become a mecca for the surrounding communities. But it's, as mayor, and I think a lot of my colleagues up here on council feel the same way, it's not really fair to ask our taxpayers not to get the taxpayer relief when a lot of the people using the stations are themselves benefiting in their own communities and the own taxes they're paying because they're getting that relief from the cable franchise fees coming into their own town. And our job is to protect the municipality on various fronts. And I will say that we value the work that you do. We value the work of the Arts Council. We value the work of so many wonderful nonprofits in this town, but that doesn't mean that when we're making difficult budget decisions, we can afford $250,000 when that money could be spent for taxpayer relief. This is not to say that PCTV hasn't been a good steward. I think they have been a good steward. And we know because of that, there's also substantial reserves that PCTV still has. I think the last documents we saw was upwards of $500,000 in reserves. So we're not trying to kill the station in any way. We value the work that you do. Just we're really imploring you to use all of this energy and excitement about the station to fundraise privately. And I don't know if there's any other comments from council or if there's a motion to approve the resolution for the funding for the first quarter.
I would like to move the resolution.
Moved by Ms. Niedergang. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Krummeler. Mr. Quinn?
I just want to point out that I think it's reasonable and for the municipality to ask PCTV to fundraise. Every public radio program that I listen to, every PBS broadcast that I tune into lists a laundry list of corporations and foundations who fund the programming, who make it possible. I think we've made the request before my time on council that PCTV ramp up its private fundraising, and I don't know whether there's evidence that that significantly happened. As a taxpayer, I think, I don't want to speak for all taxpayers, but many taxpayers would like some relief from the ever-increasing cost of providing services that the community values. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comment? All in favor? Oh, did you want to comment, Ms. Ross?
I just wanted to add that I thank you for coming. I've been very moved by all your comments, and I honestly, I wish you much success, because I would like to see this continue, the work that you're doing and the services that you're providing. I know many individuals, and I have friends who have enjoyed and benefited from your programs. So I really wish you much success, and I have been. I've enjoyed hearing all the work that you're doing, and how passionate you are about the work that you're doing. And I just would, like my colleague here said, to encourage you to use that passion to continue with your work.
Thank you. All right. All in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Resolution 19388 passes unanimously. And now we'll go back to our reports. And the first report tonight is the traffic calming plan implementation outline, which is a follow-up to the October 21st, 2019 special council meeting. And I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Stockton for that report. And I would say, if you're here, you're welcome to stay. We will have more public comment at the close of the meeting.
Spray thingamajig, so hopefully it starts out good. It's so comfortable. Allergies are killing me tonight. Yeah. I just use my
I think if you speak into your mic and speak loudly, we can hear you. And I do want to keep moving because we have a lot to cover tonight.
Okay. Good evening. So at the special council meeting on the October 21st on speeding and traffic calming, we had indicated that I'd be back at this meeting to give you an update. So as part of the agenda packet, there is a memorandum about what we are doing to move ahead traffic calming plans for the 11 roads that were part of that package. And just as a follow-up, through the discussion on October 21st, we added in a portion of Harrison Street that was not part of the original map and the original list. So that is now creates a situation where all of Harrison Street now, including a portion of Ewing Street up to Mount Lucas, is included in this traffic calming master plan. The good news is that a lot of these streets that were indicated in the traffic calming master plan are in some form of a project already. The only project that we do not have the only street that we don't have an active project already in the works for is the Snowden Lane section between Leabrook and Overbrook Drive. Every other roadway is in some form of a project. So
To start off the list, we have the Paul Robeson Place, Wiggins Street, Hamilton Avenue corridor. That is part of our current corridor study, and I'll be looking to have a final report and recommendation to council in the first half of 2020. The next group of streets were Hibben Road, Edge Hill Street, and Lovers Lane. Those three residential streets work in tandem with Library Place, and we will be looking at trying out piloting different low-cost interventions to address some of the speeding and safety concerns that have come forth on those streets. The next group of streets, Terhune Road, Jefferson Road, and Walnut Lane intersections with Valley Road, and then Harrison Street, Ewing Street from Mount Lucas to the West Windsor border. Some of those roads are also included in the professional service agreement on tonight's agenda, in which we will be gathering data and putting together recommendations for up to 11 intersections. So a majority of these are underway. The other one caveat is with Elm Road that's on our list for consideration of traffic calming. That roadway is a county roadway, but we are fortunate that we received a federal Safe Routes to School grant, so we at least can start looking at that section of roadway by looking at the intersection of Elm Road and Cleveland. So everything is in the works. Next year we'll look to get a comprehensive traffic engineering professional service agreement to council for consideration to gather data on all of the streets that we currently do not have data on that are on this list. And then we'll keep moving through the process and putting together recommendations for council's consideration. I do want to add a comment after Alex Merchant made his public comment that the state DOT is in the process of updating their highway strategic safety plan, and this is something they do every 5 years, and they have a big push to try to get it down to the local level. By the information they've presented, they show that unsafe speed is the third leading cause of New Jersey fatalities. And so there are opportunities to participate in that program for all residents of New Jersey. They have a website called saferoadsforallnj.com. They also have a summit coming up in January, and there's also an opportunity to work on focus groups, because they've identified about 12 different topics related to safety for the motoring public, and they want people to participate in those individual focus groups to be able to give the real-time feedback on a local level that will help this plan be successful for the next 5 years.
That sounds terrific. If you can write that up too, because probably that would sound like a long link, and if we can put some sort of information about it as an announcement up on our website, it'll let people access that, and we can put it out on the newsletter and through other channels. But that sounds great, and a great way to engage folks. And I also want to give a shout out to Alex too, to thank him for coming forward and sharing some ideas. One of the pieces of this that I think is really exciting is the piloting of the low-cost interventions. Because if we find that some of those work, it's a way to have even if it's not necessarily permanent, it's low cost, which might let us do it in more places more quickly and get something out there while we're working on whatever permanent fix is. And, maybe even the low cost thing works well enough for that to be the fix for a while. So I think it's exciting, it's there, and I know we had a little bit of trial with that with the Beta Bike Lane, but that might be a back and forth with council and with our legal counsel to figure out how do we do those things if we don't have an ordinance in place and some of the logistical challenges. But I'm really happy to see that as part of this list. Ms. Krummeller?
Thanks so much for doing this. I know it's in good hands with you. But I wonder if maybe there's really no committee or anyone looking at this anymore, and that maybe it could be part of the Traffic Safety Committee agenda as a regular item, just update on traffic calming master plan. We have the meeting once a month, and that way we can just make sure we can hear what's going on and kind of keep tabs on it.
Yeah, that's a great forum. It's, for those of you that don't know, we have an internal working group that is made up of police, health representation, engineering, and public works. And in the past, we focused on smaller topics, but I think more things like this, like a traffic calming master plan, would be great in our purview because we can give it a good overall view in terms of the entire community.
Great. Are there any other questions for Deanna? Yep, Ms. Nealgreen.
Thank you so much, Deanna. It's really exciting to see this project move forward. So I have just a question about detail and then a question about schedule. So the detail question, when you mentioned, and Mayor Lempert also mentioned, the low-cost traffic calming, can you just describe that a tiny bit?
Well, we've already tried a few different things. So before Walnut Lane was reconstructed, we experimented with curb bump outs to reduce the radius of curbs. That helped to slow traffic at intersections and shorten crossing distance for pedestrians. We've also tried out the speed cushions on John Street before we went ahead and did a final implementation. What I'm looking at right now is what can we do at intersections with turning movements to make that safer and to slow vehicles down. So for the Hibben and Edge Hill areas, there's a large percentage of people when they make left turns that they really cut the corners. So I'm looking at what interventions can we make at the center line of the roadway so turning vehicles actually have to make more of a right angle turn to make that turn. And so we're looking at these center line, almost like, I think they've been called armadillos before, but it's just like a 3-inch raised rubber area along the center of the road, and we can use it on both sides of the crosswalk so that people don't cut the angle. When they make left turns, they actually have to come to a slower stop before they make that left turn.
Is this the kind of thing that once you run into it, you're like, ooh, I didn't like that, and you're not going to do it a second time?
Well, I think that's why we're trying it out. I know they use it in New York City, and so we want to look and just test it out and see if it's an opportunity for us. There's other things with just painting that we can also do, or flexible delineators. So there's a lot in the toolbox that can be implemented depending on the situation.
Okay. And then the second question was, as I said, was schedule. I know like the Wiggins corridor, Wiggins-Hamilton, that's going to be an ongoing project in 2020. What else do you foresee we might get to, let's say, next year in 2020?
And off of this list that you're talking about, well, we're definitely going to be trying those low-cost implementations, and we do have the ongoing study, if awarded tonight, for these various roadways. So I think a lot of things will be in process and in study this year, moving into the actual physical construction. That'll be dependent upon, obviously, budgets, but what the recommendations are. And perhaps I should come back in June next year again and give an update as to where we're at, because that will have gotten us 6 months of data gathering time and processing. So I'll do that.
Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Deanna? Okay, so we do have a companion resolution, 19377, which is a resolution referring traffic calming master plan to the planning board.
I'll move it.
It's moved by Ms. Krummeler.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Niedergang. Any discussion on this resolution? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. And then the next report, we're going to return to Ms. Stockton for the municipal fueling station update regarding the 9 recommended actions which were discussed at the November 18th, 2019 work session.
So after the meeting on, that we had on these recommendations, we did meet with SPRAB, the SPRAB subcommittee, and talk through process and expectations. So just going off of the list that was compiled for that last council meeting, there were 3 items that are either require no action or are completed, and those were that the fuel station would remain at Mount Lucas, that certain diesel public work vehicles will be moved to fuel at the Harrison Street location, and the 3rd item would be to remove the existing generator at the site. All of those have either been completed or did not require action. The in-process items, again, there are 3 of those. That would be the removal of the canopy, installation of new lighting to replace the lighting provided by the canopy, and exploring repairs to the River Road fueling facility. So I have been able to gather more data on all 3 of those items. We're looking to move ahead what we can as quickly as we can. The removal of the canopy will take 2 to 3 days, and obviously is subject to the availability of the contractor. Unfortunately, we learned that the canopy could not be reused by Princeton Plasma Physics Lab as we thought it could be. And I've also gotten more information about repairs to the River Road fueling facility. It looks like anything out there that we would want to move ahead with, it would be at least 4 to 5 months just once the order is placed to get the equipment and get it installed. And still working on the final details on the cost and how that fits into budget. But we are moving ahead as we can to get that lighting replaced as soon as the canopy is ready to come down with the vendor. And then lastly, the 3 additional items that are on hold are the landscaping plan, the screening wall, both for extending it as well as adding the brick veneer to finish it. So we're working with the subcommittee of the Site Plan Review Advisory Board to look at the entire area, that entire portion of the site bounded by 206 Cherry Hill, Mount Lucas, and then PFAR's parking lot. Because it is a gateway into this part of town, we're looking to have an overall view of the improvements there. So other than the canopy removal and the replacement lighting, no other physical construction work will be completed on the fuel station. We are working at this point to get all of the road improvements done. And there's been a push, obviously, over the last couple of weeks to get that done. The contractor has been delayed, and now the weather is setting in, and so he's trying to push even harder to get certain things done, and then he'll be back in the spring to finish up that project. So you will see some activity, but it won't be on the fuel station. We're going to be meeting again in January with the subcommittee of SPRAB to look at where they're at on their recommendations and work together with coming up with a package for council's consideration in the spring, with the thought that the final improvements would be completed next fall, so fall of 2020. But just on the, if I can give you a little update on the road project, they are working to finish up all the curb and sidewalk in the next week, do some base paving this week into maybe Monday next week, and then leave the site until March. When they come back, they'll finish the island. They're actually pulling the island out because they constructed it wrong. So they'll be pulling it out, paving it over for the winter. We'll actually be striping it and putting flexible delineators in where the island is going to be, which in a way, it's actually a nice way to pilot the island at their expense, to make sure that it is the right design and allows for the turning movements, but still increases the safety that we're so seeking at that area. And so that'll be done next year. They'll come back and get the island in.
We appreciate your attention to detail and holding the contractor to what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
We work hard to
I
try to keep them in line, but it is a challenge.
Are there any other questions for Deanna? Yep, Ms. Fargo.
I just had one that I'm not sure if it was addressed in this report, but I recall hearing concerns about vehicles that were turning and having to go into the opposite lane. Is that being addressed at some point, if it hasn't already?
That's been part of the discussion about reaching out to the school district to ask them, if I recall this correctly, to look for other options.
Okay. So it was just the buses that we...
It's the school buses, correct. And we have had a few municipal employees that, for whatever reason, were traveling through in the wrong direction, but that they've been spoken to about that.
The other issue, what we've also done, one, we've had a conversation with the school board in terms of the direction in which the vehicles need to approach and come into the fueling station, and we'll continue to monitor the situation.
As River Road develops, though, would that be a possible alternative?
For the school buses, definitely.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Thank you.
And I apologize for the horn section over here. I'm coming down with some sort of cold.
Are there any other questions for Deanna or comments on the report? Okay, thank you. Next, we have a report by the Task Force on Walkway Safety, and I'd like to invite up Sam Bunting. And Pam Hurst, did you also want to come up, or do you just want to be recognized for your help on this? Okay.
I think Pam has a few words that she'd like to say after I'm done.
While Sam and Pam are getting set up, I just want to thank them both for their resident volunteers and working on a really important issue, and we appreciate the time and effort you spent on this.
Yeah, so thank you for setting aside the time to hear our summary of the Walkway Safety Task Force. This was an ad hoc task force that was set up with members of the former Complete Streets Committee to examine aspects relating to making our sidewalks and crosswalks safer and more appealing for pedestrians. So in particular, as you can see hopefully on your screen, we set aside 3 key priority areas, which were to look at crosswalk safety, walkway lighting, and to assess what we could do to take care of trip hazards which arise because of uneven sidewalks. So just in terms of the statistical analysis that we did, we observed that pedestrian fatalities on US roads are showing a worrying upward trend in recent years of approximately 40% increase since 2008. So we were very interested to find out how frequent the crashes involving pedestrians are in Princeton. And to do this, we were helped very ably by Sergeant Thomas Murray of the Princeton Police, who actually went into the police records and analyzed every accident involving a pedestrian and a motor vehicle since consolidation in 2013. And what we see is that there isn't really a trend showing an increase in pedestrian crashes. It kind of varies up and down from year to year. But what we're looking at is an average of approximately 19 crashes involving pedestrians per year. And some of those are quite serious, so obviously it's something that we would like to try to reduce and to get down. So Sergeant Murray's report identified a number of intersections which had an above average rate of pedestrian crashes, and these would take some of the streets and intersections that you would probably expect. So in particular, intersections on the Hamilton-Wiggins corridor and on the Nassau Street corridor and also on Washington Road have crosswalks where we have seen an increased number of crashes. So what we would like to do, one recommendation from this task force, would be to pass this information to the Traffic Safety Committee and ask them to identify whether it's possible to put in countermeasures to try to improve safety at some of these intersections. Some of these intersections are obviously part of corridor studies which are currently underway by the engineering department, in particular on the Hamilton-Wiggins corridor, so there should be opportunities there to make those intersections safer for pedestrians. So in addition to safety, we also wanted to try to make walking around downtown Princeton a delightful experience, something that will entice people to consider walking as a means of transportation and to enhance the quality of life of Princeton residents. So one of the ways that we did that was to consider which crosswalks in Princeton do we think are good, which are working well. And for example, here are two which we identified have some features which are good. Notably, the crosswalk at McCarter Theatre near the old Dinky station, which Princeton University upgraded with some very nice features. Notably, the raised crosswalk design, which we think is very appealing for pedestrians. It helps to mark out the crosswalk to drivers. It reduces barriers for people in wheelchairs or with strollers. And that nice wide intersections provides a nice safe place for people to cross. We also see at that crosswalk things like lighting, which has been carefully designed to illuminate the crosswalk, and also the presence of the flashing beacon, which helps to alert drivers to the presence of pedestrians. We see. Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay. So another crosswalk which we thought had some good features was the one outside Princeton Public Library on Witherspoon Street. Again, we see features including the lighting, which is appropriate at the level to illuminate the crosswalk, and the flashing beacons again. So those crosswalks have some things which are nice, and one of the important things that we consider is the lighting. Many of the crosswalks in Princeton do not have lighting which corresponds to best practices as recommended by the Federal Highway Authority. So there's a lot of opportunities to improve lighting at crosswalks, which would hopefully reduce the proportion of crashes which are taking place with pedestrians at crosswalks. What we find is that 35% of the crashes involving pedestrians are actually taking place at crosswalks. And a lot of the times, those involve drivers who are turning across the crosswalk and who just don't see the pedestrian. So that's something which can be addressed in part by lighting and potentially by other mechanisms as well. So moving on to considering lighting more generally, we find that there is an opportunity to improve lighting on many walkways in Princeton, and we can do that, for example, by using pedestrian-oriented lighting, such as what you see here on University Place in Princeton University campus. And by installing pedestrian-oriented lighting like that in other locations, we could make pedestrians feel safer, be more able to identify trip hazards, and just to make walking a more delightful experience. Obviously, we can't put in street lamps like this everywhere, but we recommend that it might be possible to consider other opportunities for lighting, such as the Bollard Lighting, which you see here on Walnut Lane. This is at the back end of Princeton High School, and in this case, the lights are on a 3-foot tall pillar, which is potentially less obtrusive to neighbors and causing less light pollution, while at the same time illuminating the walkway. So in total, we had approximately 10 recommendations, which we're going to share with council and with the engineering department. In general, we would hope to try to improve our design practices so that we could make walkways safer. Obviously, there's going to be a question of resources and which crosswalks and walkways we can improve first. So one thing which council may want to consider is the creation of a high priority pedestrian network, which could be something which could be included in a potential future master plan, which would identify particular sidewalks and walkways as locations which we want to upgrade first and to reach minimum standards to improve the pedestrian experience in Princeton.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything, Pam?
Oh, there we go. I'm the stunningly superficial one. Thank you, Sam, for a great job pulling together all the statistics. As the mayor knows, because I've talked to her about this, one of the, I walk all the time. I walk at night. I walked here tonight down a corridor that is walked all the time and is very poorly lit, the Witherspoon Street corridor. And I have taken to carrying little flashlights, and I had thought for a very modest amount of money, if you wanted to do any kind of education or a promotion of walking in Princeton, we could give these away to people who are interested in walking and walking safely at night, just trying to get people out of their cars. I have always felt walking is a mode of transportation, and I don't know whether there is this transportation trust fund that the university did provide for projects. I know it has not been used, and perhaps some of these priorities could be funded by this fund as a mode of transportation, because it's a wonderful, I mean, we had it in our report. It's a non-polluting, very sustainable, very democratic mode of transportation, and we just don't pay enough attention to it. So that's it for me.
Great. Thank you, and thank you for this report and also the attention to lighting, too, because it's often, I think, one of the missing elements, and I think it's really helpful to have these recommendations.
I have a question.
Yeah,
also,
Mr. Williamson.
Okay. Please excuse my cold and my coughing and nose blowing. But I was speaking to one of our residents recently who is disabled and wheelchair bound, and she made the point that many times when these pedestrian studies are done, and when they address those who are in wheelchairs, the assumption is that once you're ADA compliant, that's good enough. And she mentioned that you almost never get someone who actually is in a wheelchair that's involved with the actual study. It's usually 9 times out of 10 is someone who's not in a wheelchair saying, this is what's best for those in the wheelchair. So that's a preface to asking, when doing these studies, are we doing enough from your perspective of finding people who are actually wheelchair bound, who are actual users, to find out what issues they may be facing, and because what this person said to me is that the ADA requirements are a nice floor, but it doesn't address some real user issues, and there are a lot of things that can be learned from someone who's physically out there having to deal with those issues.
Yeah, well, we unfortunately had so much on our plate, we did not get into handicapped use of the pathways. But I know it's an engineering, when you redo the sidewalks, don't you have to consider putting the ramps at the crosswalks and making them more handicapped accessible? And they are treacherous for everyone who walks or in a whether you're walking with a walker or a cane or even on 2 feet. The issues that we identified are treacherous for everyone. So, but you can address maybe the handicap issue.
Right. We do, when we do replace sidewalks, we do meet ADA standards. But you're right, we don't typically have input from somebody that has those challenges. I know some of our engineering courses, we do have the opportunity to, they have courses for ADA design where they put you into a wheelchair or they blindfold you so that you do have opportunities to experience it. So if there are residents that are willing to help and participate with us, we would love to work with them.
Sure, I'll connect you to the person.
I was just going to say, I know Princeton University, when they did their master plan, their pedestrian walkway master plan, they actually hired students with disabilities to walk every single inch of that campus, and they identified major improvements based on what they said. So
absolutely,
we can
I'll
do
reach
that.
out to the university. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the problems that we have is that we just don't know where all the problems are. So one of the recommendations, one of the things that we considered in a task force was how we can lower the barriers to residents to reporting potential problems like those that you just mentioned. So, for example, if there's an issue with a curb cut that isn't working properly for a disabled person, how would that person interact with the municipality to have that remediated, and what process should they expect? So, obviously, one of the key portals for doing that would be through Access Princeton, but we want to try to make more people aware of that opportunity. So one of the things that we're doing is putting together a fact sheet, which we'll put on the municipal website, which would hopefully act as a resource to let people know how they can report problems with sidewalks and walkways and what they can expect from the town in terms of remediating them.
I have to thank Jenny for putting that fact sheet together. It's very useful and important.
Thanks.
So Ms. Krummeller, and then Mr. Quinn, and then Ms. Fraga.
Yeah, I wanted to react. I mean, I think we did not address disabled pedestrians or users of sidewalks, and I think I have to admit that in the Complete Streets committee that for a couple years, that's a group that we don't usually consider, and so I'm glad you brought it up, and I think. Going forward, we should, just like what Deanna was saying, we should try to make a better effort to outreach to those communities, maybe even to serve on one of these committees.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll do.
Thank you for your work on this very thorough report. If we could get it onto the municipal website somehow. Not that it's easily searchable, but especially like the fact sheet where you talked about seasonally it's going to start snowing again, and we were amazed on the Public Works Committee that there are many people who move here from places that don't typically have snow, don't know that they're supposed to, that they're responsible for clearing the walk in front. And so I think that's a challenge for us as a community to get the word out, and also to help people who can't necessarily remove snow anymore. And we have to do something about the plow piles that cover the ramps at intersections, because no one wants to deal with it. And I think it's something that the municipality should plan for and be out there. We shouldn't have kids climbing as much as they'd like to, we shouldn't have kids climbing over mountains of snow walking to school. Thank you. Thanks for your work.
Thanks. I too want to thank you for all the work that went into putting together this report. And I just wanted to add, when we're talking about groups that we may not be thinking about, it's common for us to do education and outreach for our children about the proper use of crossing streets. But I think one group that we also need to consider are those that maybe because of cultural differences or language barriers are not as well informed about the proper use of crosswalks. So if we could include in the recommendations educational outreach in other languages as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking initially that we should have some kind of event, some kind of promotion, something, which is how I came up with maybe giving away the flashlights. Education is crucial. People don't even know how to use the buttons. Where we have wonderful crosswalks, they don't realize you have to press the button in order to have it change. I mean, there's an awful lot of education.
And I would say even for drivers, because I've had instances where I've stopped for a pedestrian on the crosswalk, and then only to have a driver try to pass me and almost hit someone.
Or what I've had plow into the back of you because you have stopped for a pedestrian, and the person behind you gets annoyed and doesn't stop. Yeah.
Thank you very much. As a walker myself, rather than a bike rider, although I aspire to be more of a bike rider, but I mostly tend to walk places. I really appreciate this, and my colleagues have already spoken about a couple of the issues that I wanted to bring up, but in terms of the communication piece, that's something I hope that council will be working on more next year. I think, putting something up on the website reaches a very small number of people, so I hope we'll also put it in our social media, put it on Twitter, put it on Facebook, and have, next door have other sources whereby this information can get out. I'd also like to hope to maybe move towards this next year is, have realtors have a packet that they give out to new people who move to town, which I think they do already, but have this be one of the elements that is addressed in it, along with, where you can park your car, but just, how to walk in town, how to use the crosswalks, what to do if you have a problem. So I think you've really highlighted some very important issues, and I really appreciate your work. The one thing that struck me is I worked my way this afternoon through every single accident, read about each one of them, and then you summarized some of that data at the end. And contrary to what I would have expected, the highest motor vehicle accident group for pedestrians, more than 25% is 18 to 25-year-olds. And the second highest group is the 26 to 35-year-olds. So it's not older people who are maybe taking longer to cross the street, which I would have expected would be one of the issues. So I'm wondering if you, having studied this a bit, or maybe Sergeant Murray has any theories. Is it cell phone distraction? Is it that younger people walk more? Just wondering if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think your point about young people might be out walking around more might be a big part of that. We have a big university with a lot of young people and a busy road that they would have to cross to get into town. So obviously there's risk involved every time a student is crossing that road, and occasionally some of those students and people affiliated with the university are getting into crashes. On Washington Road as well, you have a major road with busy traffic which bisects the university. And again, that puts young people at risk whenever they're trying to move around campus. So that was one of the many interesting statistics that came out of Sergeant Murray's analysis. And another one was the fact that the motor vehicle drivers are found to be responsible in more than 75% of the pedestrian crashes, which kind of goes against the idea that this is caused by rampant jaywalking or scofflaw pedestrians. In fact, in most cases, it's actually the driver who is responsible for these crashes.
It's just hard to see. I think Sergeant Murray was saying it's very common during the seasons, the transition seasons, when it's still warm out and people are walking, but it gets dark. And that's when he finds the most incidents. You just can't see. The lighting is bad. And as far as older people, maybe they're more reluctant to walk. I don't know. I know I'm the weird one. I'm always out there walking, but it could be, it's tough. So people are very cautious when they get older, and so maybe they're not walking as much as we think they are.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Sam and Pam for all their work, and I thought it's a good report, and I hope that it doesn't just sit there, and I'm passing it on to the council to take this on. But also, and I also want to thank Deanna, and I do think Deanna and the engineering department is forward thinking and is working very hard on these issues to, I know now we look at a lot of different, we have adopted the Complete Streets Committee, and we're looking at pedestrian and bike facilities. So I just want to, thank you for that. And Sergeant Murray helped us too. He was good, really helpful, and Jack West helped us. Thanks.
We appreciate that, and we appreciate the hard work of our volunteers, and I hope this isn't the end for them. There's a lot on that to-do list that I'm hoping we can get additional feedback and work together on implementing.
I think that's a very important point. The recommendations that we have here are the things that we focused on, but there's a lot of things that for one reason or another we chose not to focus on. So, for example, education efforts have been covered in part by the Street Smart NJ program, which the Princeton Police took part in. There are also questions about turning movements through crosswalks, whether new turn restrictions might be appropriate at certain intersections in the town. There's questions about speed limits that we didn't get into. So, there are actually a lot of topics that we chose not to cover with the goal of trying to have a more focused report.
And I want to thank Jenny. She was a real trooper in this, and now she could be a volunteer citizen helping on this issue.
Yeah, you stole my thunder a little bit, and I didn't want this to be a spoiler alert, but no, Jenny has volunteered to continue on and work on this project. I know it's been a passion of yours, but I think we should have some sort of follow-up meeting if we're able to this week to connect before the holidays or in early January. It seems like every year we try to think about how to better organize all of our transportation committees. And I think one thing we've recognized that we don't want the pedestrian issues to fall through the cracks. And so we want to make sure that wherever those lie, and I know there's a lot of issues that come under that, and lighting impacts not just pedestrians, but bicyclists, pretty much anybody who's outside of their car, and drivers too. But sort of where that falls, where some of these issues fall, and we want to make sure that somebody has ownership over them and is continuing to move the needle on it. So thank you for laying this foundation, and thank you for hopefully the work that you'll be doing to see it get implemented. It's a great report. Oh, yes. If people have comments, please just come to the microphone and speak.
Kate Warren, Jefferson Road. As someone who walks to and from work and almost everywhere else in town, thank you very much. What I would like to point out, and I could be incorrect, but number 8, step up enforcement for failure to maintain sidewalks. I believe a few years ago the ordinance was changed, and it may have happened at the time of consolidation when the responsibility for the sidewalks rested with the town to notify the owner of the sidewalk per se that it needed to be fixed. It now reads, if I'm correct, that that person or business has to notify the engineering department, I have a problem on my sidewalk, how do I fix it? So you're waiting for the perpetrator of the failure to self-report it. So you may want to look at that. If I'm totally wrong, I apologize, but the last time I looked when I fell on Nassau Street, that's what I recall reading. And thank you for your work.
Sure, just for clarification, that's more related if a tripping hazard on the sidewalk is related to a street tree. The ordinance still puts the onus of maintenance on the abutting property owner.
Good evening. My name is Renee Peterkin of 10 Lawrence Drive. I'm a parent, guardian of my 14-year-old sister who recently moved up here from Florida, and I have a 2-year-old daughter. We are primarily pedestrians and cyclists. I am concerned about the walkability. In an effort for my sister to get to better know the community and her classmates, she stays late after school to participate in clubs and activities. And because we live so close, she's not able to use the bus, so she has to walk to campus in order to catch Tiger Transit back to housing. And it's dark, and she's a little bit concerned about crossing the streets. So I appreciate your work in highlighting the role that lighting plays in our children being able to safely walk to and from school. And I just want to make a comment on the traffic calming measures that were discussed earlier. I bicycle my daughter to school at the YWCA, and I would really like to see some measures implemented there to increase safety for pedestrians and cyclists. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christopher Barr. I live on Ridgeview Road, and I want to thank you all for the work that you've been doing to support pedestrian safety here in Princeton. I just want to flag an issue of high importance for us on Ridgeview Road is that we don't currently have a walking path that is safe that will link us to downtown Princeton. The sidewalks going up the Great Road stops about 200 yards short of Ridgeview Road, and coming up Cherry Hill Road, it stops about halfway up. And we have students that come up to work in the Ridgeview Woods every week, and they risk their lives. Some of them walk, some of them bike. We also have neighbors and family members that regularly run, and to connect with the sidewalks, again, it is putting lives at risk. So if you could put that on your list, we'd certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tina Catzio, 79 Dempsey Avenue. I would like to thank the task force for their great work. And because even though I'm very lazy and I'm much less of a pedestrian than a bike rider, I do walk. So I have a quick question and a comment. The question is about the flashing hawk lights. As a pedestrian, I'm very happy that they are there. But as a car driver, I realize that they are not all that great because they flash in your eyes when it's dark, and so then it just becomes, you're blinded, and it becomes completely impossible to see whether the pedestrian is about to cross or has already crossed. So I'm wondering if there's a way to like even redirect them or something so that they light the pedestrian rather than, flash into my eyes, or direct them down so that I see them but I don't get blinded. I'm sure there are rules about that. And the comment is about sidewalks. I would like to thank Councilman Quinn for bringing up the snow clearing. I think snow on the sidewalks make the sidewalks extremely dangerous. And I personally don't see why the town cannot take on the clearing of the snow. Because after all, the sidewalk is part of the public walkway. And we clear the snow for the cars. And as Pam has said, walking is a mode of transportation. And I think we should support that by doing the clearing so that the homeowners don't have to do this. So in full disclosure, I don't have a sidewalk in front of my house. So I have no skin in this game. I just want it to be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council, and thank you for allowing us to make a public comment.
This is specifically on the report that you just heard on the sidewalks.
You still have
Yeah, we're going to do the open public comment at the end. Yeah, we still have a couple hours to go. You might want to take a seat, so save your strength. Are there any other comments on the reports? On this report? All right, thank you very much. All right, and I wanted to flip the order of the next two reports and have the Annual Housing Authority report next, because I know there are a bunch of folks here for that.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Kathy Art. I am not Leighton Moulin. He is in the back. Just if anybody got us confused, Leighton is our board chairperson. So I'd like to thank you for allowing us this opportunity to speak about our agency.
Yeah, can you just raise the mic so people can hear you?
Sorry. Again, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and I'll try to do this as quickly as possible in the guise of time. The Housing Authority of Princeton is comprised of 236 units. We have Maple Franklin with 20 units, Clay Street property with 50 units, Spruce Circle with 50 units for seniors. Reading Circle has 100 units, 60 for seniors and 40 for families, and Karen Court with 16 units of low-income housing. These units were recently converted to a RAD conversion, which were converted from public housing to a RAD demonstration, rental assistance demonstration program, which basically converted these units to project-based rental assistance vouchers and moved in from the public housing side of HUD to multifamily. So basically they get a Section 8 voucher that's tied to the structure, and that subsidy flows directly from multifamily to the Housing Authority. The RAD program is a voluntary program that the Princeton Housing Authority ventured into in an effort to better save money so that they can do the much-needed repairs at that property. As everyone knows, there has been a diminishing of funds for public housing, and Section 8 is a vehicle for housing authorities to take advantage nowadays to leverage outside resources of money. We can leverage tax credit monies and several other federal and state resources that were not available to us before as a public housing authority or as a public housing unit. We fully intend to take our RAD program to the next step. We did the conversion, and the tenants signed all new leases. There was very little impact personally for the residents. They're still paying 30% of their income, so there were no ill effects in doing this conversion. However, what we will be able to do, again, is leverage outside funding so that we may secure dollars to do capital improvements. We really are looking to do both rehab and redevelopment and future development of the land and the structures that we already have to be more of a progressive agency and fulfill some of the needs that the municipality may require. I skipped around. Sorry, I took lots of notes, but I skipped around. One of our ongoing activities includes the development at Maple Franklin. This is a redevelopment or a development project that we're doing in conjunction with the city, as well as PCH. The intent is of developing and redeveloping the property, bringing approximately 80 new units of affordable housing to the town. The agency is looking forward to a collaborative project that will leverage, once again, outside federal and state resources to produce a successful project and create new homes for those wanting to stay and live in Princeton. Preliminarily, we have been meeting with individuals from the town and from some consulting agencies as well as PCH, and there are some preliminary artist renderings of what potentially could be occupied on that site. So we are now in the midst of doing presentations to our residents and filling them in on the progress that we're making, and we will soon be coming back in front of council to do a little bit more of a formal introduction and explanation of what that project may look like. While we are doing this, the Public Housing Authority is also currently negotiating a contract for property management and development. For about the past year and a half, the Housing Authority has been working under what's called a shared service agreement with the Elizabeth Housing Authority. That's who I work for directly full-time, but like I just explained, the shared service agreement allows me the opportunity to be here in Princeton as well as the Elizabeth Housing Authority. But in an effort to really bring the agency into a stronger position to help participate in the municipality, bringing on an outside contractor, an outside vendor that has both management and development experience would serve to be a tremendous asset to the agency. In so doing, we can anticipate the enhancement of the delivery of services to residents, to better respond to daily maintenance issues, and to begin to formulate a real redevelopment program that could include rehab of existing properties and the construction of new units. While that is going on, we are also looking at a weatherization program for our boiler systems. As you know, the buildings are very old, as are the boilers. So we have begun doing some investigations into see whether or not we can qualify for state weatherization funds. As late as about a month ago, I submitted reports, statistical analysis of our resident population to see if it both meets the state and HUD eligibility requirements so that we may be eligible for funds from the state to either replace or repair our outdated boiler systems. So that's ongoing as we speak. The Housing Authority prides itself on really trying to engage and get supportive services going. We just recently started a Princeton Kindness Food Project, and we had several community advocates and activists that came to us and approached us about doing a meal service, a meal program for the families and seniors of the Housing Authority. So every Tuesday we are now getting prepared meals from the Trenton Food Pantry, Trenton Area Soup Kitchen. Again, the meals are prepared and trayed and delivered to the Housing Authority, and 50 families and seniors are able to get fresh meals. So that's been a real big plus. And it has been well received. In addition to that, I had been working with the Jewish Family Services of Greater Mercer County to implement a Healthy Choice mobile market. Beginning in January or February, we're looking at the Jewish Family Services will be outfitting a refrigerator truck and bringing in the supplies, and once a month so far, bringing in fresh fruits, vegetables, meats, eggs, juices to the Housing Authority properties. So it is truly a mobile market with the initiatives of bringing fresh, healthy food to the families who are in most need. So we're also excited about that. In conjunction with that, the Princeton Senior Resource Center, they staff both the Spruce Circles Community Center and the Reading Circle Community Center. They provide assessment and case management, caregiver support, assistance with benefit and applications, consultations and brief counseling to individuals and families, information and linkages to area resources, volunteer visitors, linkage to transportation services, including voucher sales, programs during the year to promote health and socializing, professional consultation to PHA staff and accompaniment on visiting to sensitive issues, arranging and overseeing programs and donations from outside providers, monthly bulletin of programs offered, and annual report of programs that are offered. They have become a very integral part of the Housing Authority and the day-to-day management because they end up being our social workers, our social service providers. If there's issues with the residents, we can reach out to those social workers, and they assist us on getting some of the problems resolved. So they're a tremendous asset. Also, another great collaboration the Housing Authority is involved in is with the YMCA of Princeton. They provide us with a lot of educational and social supports for our youth. So there's programs that are for children under the age of 4. There's programs that we do for ages 5 to 12, and then there's teen programs. So there are things going on mostly at the Pinnell Center that are there to provide both after-school help, homework help, tutoring, and just overall guidance for the youth. So that's a big program for the Housing Authority. It's so important that we have looked into expanding it to the Reading Circle Community Center, and it looks like that's going to go through. So sometime in 2020, that will be happening as well. So there will be another a youth center that we can locate and maybe do after-school programming and build up the young kids and help with homework. So we're excited about that. Our latest venture is the Housing Authority's contacted T-Mobile. T-Mobile has signed on with HUD as a registered vendor. There's a project that HUD has blessed. It's called the Connect Home Pilot Program, and it's giving families of low income the opportunity to have a free tablet with reduced cost internet services. So I've reached out to the T-Mobile service, and probably, again, everything's in the spring, but probably in between February and April, we will be engaging with T-Mobile. They will come out. They will deliver free tablets. We'll probably give out one to every household. And the fee for service, internet service, is about $9 a month. So very affordable. It will give kids the opportunity to A, have the internet, and B, use it for after-school activities, homework, whatever. Also for people to engage in maybe resumes, job search, all those types of resources. So having that tablet is a tremendous opportunity, and HUD recognizes the need to engage that population with services like this. So we're really excited about that program as well. The Housing Authority also signed on this year with, in conjunction with the municipality, with the Solar Energy Pilot Program. The Housing Authority, once again, is committed to seeing that project through. We're waiting to hear on approvals, but could stand to potentially benefit our residents in that they could maybe be, share in some of the cost savings if the reductions of the cost of utility go through. So that is an item that we will stand very close to the town and see what we can do to push that through. So the Princeton Housing Authority is in a period of growth and change, and as our federal dollars dwindle, the agency is aggressively seeking other resources with which we not only maintain the buildings but also improve them. In addition, the agency is actively looking to pursue expansion of affordable housing, targeting affordable rental housing for small and large families, assisting first-time home buyers, rental and housing assistance for elderly, disabled, and transitional housing for homeless and individuals and family. The PHA, the Princeton Housing Authority, wishes to create a philosophy that will serve to be instrumental in getting results achieved. Our success will be a result as the collaborations with all the stakeholders, including those local, state, and federal. We further believe that we can assist and support the municipality in creating housing opportunities that will not only satisfy the particular imposed mandates, but also those that will benefit the municipality of Princeton. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. That was great and really informative. And if you have anything in writing, I know this sort of came together last minute. If you want to just collect it and send it to us, that would be great because there's a lot of information there. And I just want to recognize some of the members of the board who are here tonight, and thank you for coming out. So, of course, Leighton Newland, Linda Saprell, thank you, Joe Weiss, and Bertha Logan. Did I miss anybody?
And Barbara Johnson.
Oh, Barbara Johnson. Yeah, thank you so
from
much.
Elizabeth Housing Authority.
Yeah, Linda. Yeah, I said Linda. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but it's we really appreciate all that you do for the community and also all the partnerships that you've built with or the organizations in town. I think we all learned something tonight about the work that you're doing, so thank you. Are there any questions? Yeah, Ms. Niedergang and then Mr. Cohen.
Thank you so much. I just have one point and one question. So the point is as you're thinking about design for the new units, for the new buildings, I just really urge you to think about utilizing green design principles to bring down the costs for the residents and everyone
Already
else
there.
going forward.
We're good.
Lovely. Thank you. The other question, one more just of curiosity, is you mentioned the program to give out tablets through T-Mobile. So, I mean, that's a fabulous thing. I know from reading studies that lack of access to the internet really holds people back from participating in the economy and everything. I'm just wondering, technically, are there going to be routers installed so how is this going to work? Is this over the airwaves?
It's a work in progress. We're currently doing this at the Elizabeth Housing Authority beginning tomorrow. So this is our first venture into it. It has been brought to us because New York City Housing Authority has done it, Philadelphia Housing Authority has done it, Camden, Trenton, Jersey City, they're all taking on this. There's no extra infrastructure cost to the Housing Authority. T-Mobile is coming in and doing the hard lift. They're coming in, administering the tablets, doing a training, loading any apps that the tenant may want, and then getting them started with it, and then providing the service.
And then the $9 a month?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
I rounded
That's fabulous.
It's 8 something, but basically $9.
Okay.
So it's amazing. Some housing authorities are sharing in the cost, and some housing authorities have other arrangements for how they're distributing them. At the Elizabeth Housing Authority, and I fully intend to do this at Princeton as well, it will be one per household. But T-Mobile, there is no limit right now to the number of units they can put out on the street to those that are in low income, not necessarily public housing, but those low income individuals. They're targeting housing authorities because we're a captive audience, basically. It's a large group. So they make no money on this, but they do make money on this because on the back end they will get their different types of relationship benefits. So. But initially to the tenant, to the housing authority, there's no extra cost.
Thank you.
Perfect. Mr. Cohen, and then we'll go to Mr. Williamson.
One quick question and one probably not so quick, but the Jewish Family Service, the mobile market program, is that free food or is it reduced? Okay.
Free food. And again, we've just entered into very early conversations. They kind of unfolded around Thanksgiving. And we played phone tag for a bit, and then we finally caught up with each other, and that the intent was they've got funding to do this. They want to do a mobile market, and I'm very familiar with executing a mobile market. We do that up in the city of Elizabeth as well. So I'm anxious to get this started. They actually will be bringing a truck with volunteers, with food. The people will be allowed to shop, which is a unique experience as opposed to getting prepackaged boxed. This is what you get. They'll be able to pick and choose. So it's an exciting venture, and it's a pretty neat thing, and hopeful that it's well received, which I know it will be, but that it takes on and that there may be funding to A, sustain it, and B, offer it maybe more than one time a month.
That sounds fantastic.
Yep.
The other question, I've had people try to explain the rental assistance demonstration program to me before without very much success.
Okay.
I'm going to ask a specific question.
Okay.
Can you said something about it giving PHA access to other kinds of funding or other financial resources than you would have had otherwise.
Typically would not
Can
be
you,
able to.
right, can
So
you
as a
specifically
public housing
say,
authority, as a public housing unit, I am restricted to just using the monies that HUD gives me. Those are operating subsidies, those are capital fund dollars, and that's about it. Those two sources of funds. So when I need to do improvements on my public housing unit, I have to rely solely on my capital funds, which every year, that amount of money generally has been reduced from prior years. So as my buildings get older, there's greater need for improvements. The funding that I would normally be getting is dwindling, and now I'm less able to keep up with the demand of what those improvements are. You hear about those nightmares from New York Housing Authority and from the larger Philadelphia, those types. They just cannot keep up with the capital improvements. So HUD, in their wisdom, came up with this program called a Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, whereby it allows a public housing authority to take their public housing units and convert them to Section 8. Under the Section 8 platform, the money is being appropriated by Congress and is set aside based upon the billed rents. So they will actually take a look at what we're billing, 30% of the tenant's income, the approved contract rent, and give us the difference between those two numbers. It's a set number that we will get every year based upon that formula of what the contract rent is and the tenant rent is. Whereas before, I was relying on subsidies that from one year to the next could change. So I could never really truly build a budget that was built on altogether solid information. It was a best guess. Now I know what I have in my budget. I know what I can bank on, but then it also allows me to maybe partner with a developer and say, hey, all these 20 units, they need a rehab. I need new roofs, I need new windows. Let's build a project, and I can leverage outside resources, whether it's, again, I go to the tax credits. Oh. There's Barbara. She's the financial person. Yes, again, the RADA also allows us to increase the rents to levels that we wouldn't typically be able to get under public housing. Those rents are higher than what you would get if you combine the tenant portion and the subsidy. So right off the bat, I'm being given more money than HUD gave me on public housing. In addition to that extra money, then I can go leverage outside resources, the tax credits, the casino redevelopment, whatever, all kinds of housing trust fund, balanced housing, home dollars, where I was not able to do that before. So the intent or the expectation will be that we'll be able to leverage outside financing and maybe make some of these very much needed repairs and maybe even do some redevelopments in the future. Any better?
Yeah, thank you.
And I just had a quick follow-up to that. When you say raise the rents, how does that impact people who are
So
in
when
those?
we converted to the RAD, there was a formula that was put into place outside of our, we put in the information about our particular housing authority and said, these are the units, this is their income, what's allowable at this time. And there's studies and analysis that HUD has done for this area, and they said, this is the rent range that we will allow for you at this property at this time. They usually do adjustments on a cost of living adjustment factor on a yearly basis. So from the time we applied to the time we closed, that number actually increased a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. But basically, HUD sets the allowable rent. It is not equal to that of, I don't want to really go too far in, it's not equal to that of the payment standard or the fair market rent of Section 8. It's a little bit less than that, but it can be pretty close to it. But again, it ends up being more than what we would have gotten with the tenant portion, the capital fund, and the operating subsidy. At the end of the day, those three items were what public housing lived on. Now I have the tenant portion, the HAP payment, which is giving me more than those other two selections, and then outside resources. So the sustainability, the growth, our ability to look 20 years down the road and be able to set aside monies in reserves. So in 20 years' time, when we know the windows need to be redone again, we can do that. It's a fully vetted program that really looks at the budget, really takes a look at what energy improvements you want to do. There were a lot of energy audits and physical needs assessment studies that were done before we actually entered into the RAD. So there's an overall program that outlines a lot of the things that we'll be doing.
Mr. Williamson, did you have a final comment?
First of all,
It's way past my bedtime. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you. Yes. The tenant. The tenant could, The housing authority could, the tenant could split it with the housing authority, so that remains to be seen. But so, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I'm aware of it, but I mean, then I will defer to Princeton preference. I mean, I'm aware of it, but to be able to speak to it directly, Joe? It's the 18.
Hi, Joseph Weiss. Dwayne, I'm sorry, I didn't entirely hear your question. Well, that issue is in the context of the development of the Franklin Terrace site. And as everyone is aware, the Franklin Terrace site is being developed. It kind of got separated. There initially it was 3 properties. One was the parking lot that was owned by the town, and then Princeton Housing Authority had Franklin Terrace and Maple Terrace, which we own outright. Those Franklin Terrace and Maple Terrace each have 10 units of housing on it. And those 20 units in total carry with them a Princeton preference. We're allowed to do that because the units on that site are no longer HUD units. They're completely unencumbered by any regulations. If they were HUD units, if they were used for affordable housing requirements, we would not be allowed to have that preference. The Housing Board feels that it's very important that we preserve that preference. So that's what we're endeavoring to do by taking and reserving the site on the corner of Franklin and Witherspoon, which is Maple Terrace, and hopefully we're starting to develop a plan to develop that site that would replace the 20 units that are going to be lost in the development of the adjoining site. Does that make sense? Or okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions for the Housing Authority? Okay. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks.
We really appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
You too. Oh, yep. Sorry, Ms. Warren.
Kate Warren, Jefferson Road. Thank you, Kathy. It was a great report.
You have to talk right into that mic.
Thank you, Kathy. It was a great report. I do have a question about the Princeton preference. I understand it. I understand why it's very important. But what I'm trying to wrap my head around is the outside sources of income or money you would be looking for to develop the Princeton preference could not be anything that's coming from the federal government, the state government. So we're talking about private money to retain the preference. And so I just want to make sure I'm understanding that maybe my understanding is incorrect, that you can use state and federal funds to retain the preference.
I actually sort of had the same question after Joe said that they're not encumbered in any way. You said they're not HUD units, the Maple Terrace and the Franklin Terrace units, but do they still receive Section 8 funding?
No, they do not. They're actually subsidized by the other units in our program.
Okay, so other
they're
Princeton
basically
Housing
just
Authority.
the tenants who live there pay the same on the same rent schedule that everyone else is, but there's no subsidy attached to those units. So we in essence, the Princeton Housing Authority is subsidizing those units through our other programs.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is probably fodder for like a longer, deeper conversation. But thank you for all of your efforts. Okay. We're very lucky to have the work that you all do in this community. And I invite you all back Wednesday night, for those interested in affordable housing at 7:30, we'll be talking about our settlement with Fair Share and our housing plan for the next several years. All right, I'm going to be doing the next report, and I'm going to try to keep it really brief. This is mainly for council, and this is for council just have in mind as we work out priorities for next year. This is about the fee in lieu of parking requirement proposal. For those of you who read the Nelson Nygaard parking report, this was one of the recommendations from the consultant. And just to back up in terms of what this is, obviously it's one of our goals to encourage the vibrancy of the downtown business district. And there are currently a lot of pressures on the retail sector nationally that are being felt locally. And two of those are just the higher number of vacancies. And the other is our desire to maintain a healthy mix of both retail and food establishments, and the growing demand for food services and the potential that has to upset that balance that's there now. So Princeton currently has a parking requirement for businesses, and that parking requirement depends on the type of use for the business and how big the storefront is. For example, a restaurant triggers a higher parking requirement than the same size retail shop. So what happens when there's a vacancy that there used to be a retail store there, and now a restaurant wants to move in, they might have to provide some extra number of parking spots, and because there's no space to build those parking spots, they have to go before the zoning board to seek a variance. Oftentimes, that process ends up being successful, but it can take up to 6 months, and it's expensive, and all that money is going towards the lawyers instead of coming to the town in the short. So the idea would be to set up a program where instead of having to go through that process, there would be a fee that you could pay into for up to some certain number of spots. So there was a subcommittee of the Economic Development Committee that looked into this program and developed a bunch of different options. One is just the status quo. Another would be having a 1-year trial period where actually you just waive the fees. Another would be a more structured program. And this was brought back to the Economic Development Committee, and the Economic Development Committee actually got some cold feet about it because they were concerned that this was going to accelerate the conversion of spaces in the downtown to food uses. Because ultimately one of the beneficiaries of this program, because they require a higher number of parking spots, would be food uses. So before there was more work done on this, the idea was to bring it back to council. I've written a memo that we can put up as part of the minutes to this meeting. And I just want to throw it out there for council to consider. Is this a priority for next year? It is a recommendation, and it would be something that we could do to move the needle on this. I will say that in the interim, the zoning department has put in place some temporary relief for this. So if the change of use is changing to a food use and it's up to 1 additional parking spot, that is waived. And you have to go through for your other variances or other approvals, but not for that. And if it's not a food use, you get up to 2 parking spaces. So that relief is already built into it. And it's really a question for council whether we want to add more relief or not. If we were to collect a fee, that fee would be set aside in a special fund that we would have to designate what it would be used for, and it is constricted by law to be used for things that would help alleviate the parking demand that was created by that change of use. So it could either be towards, some future building some parking deck, although I think the costs for doing that are probably prohibitive, but it could be used towards subsidizing transit, increasing walkability, that sort of thing. So anyway, just it's food for thought as we think about what we want to focus on for next year. And now, did you have a question? Or are you ready for council reports?
You're not interested in our feedback at this point.
We can discuss it now. I just feel like it's a lot to throw at people,
Okay.
and I wanted folks to get a chance to go back and read the Nelson Nygaard report and think about some of the considerations, and we can discuss.
Can I just say one piece of information that I'd love to have going into this is looking at some other municipalities that, and maybe that's in the Nelson.
I do, yeah. So there's other towns that have set up they're called PIPs, Parking Improvement Programs.
Okay.
So they have exactly this sort of system. And also in New Jersey, there's a few. And then Nelson Nygaard, their report references a half dozen others across the country.
Are there places that have just done away with the parking requirement entirely? And do we have any information on that?
I'm sure there are, but you're gonna get quite a bit of resistance. I mean, that would be. I mean, we could look into that too.
Yeah,
So
I'd like
I'm
to
not
at
all
least get
that
some
sure that-
data.
But not at the same time as you're developing this parking permit program.
I mean,
That's like totally a different.
I mean, my concern with just doing away with it completely is that you're leaving on the table the potential for some actual funding that would help you with transit, that would help you with improving walkability, improve signage, and everything else.
I'm not advocating a particular position. I'm
Right.
just advocating for information
Right.
to help us see the range of options.
Correct. Yeah,
as
and
we
then
go
the memo
forward.
it sort of outlines the pros and cons of those
Right.
different approaches.
Right.
Yeah, one of which would be no fee. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure we could discuss this, but I want to be able to move on because I'm trying to be respectful of everyone's time. But we'll do a quick version of council reports. So I'll start on my right with Ms. Niedergang.
Okay. I have two quick things and then one slightly longer thing. So just from the local emergency planning, just want to mention, as Ms. Stockton mentioned at the meeting, that there'll be another round of gas line replacements next year, primarily in my neighborhood, which is Riverside. So that's something to look forward to. I also want to talk a little bit about some problems that we're having with the freebie, which is going to be an issue that the town is going to have to deal with going forward. We currently have two regular buses and an alternative bus, and all of them are having some problems. Where consulting with Greater Mercer Transportation Authority, in fact, will be looking at a contract with them a little bit later about what we can do. Ordering a bus means that it's going to be, at least a year before it gets here. Then we're also faced with the situation of, do we order a diesel bus or are we ready to move to an alternative? So we have some information to gather, but some decisions to make about that. On a more positive note, the Transit Princeton map that the Transit Communications Task Force has been working on is almost ready to go out. We're nailing down the last details regarding that, and the plan is to mail that to every household to encourage them to use the freebie and Tiger Transit and other non-car modes of getting around. And then, and this is the longer issue from PEC, I would like to urge the council to, and Mayor, you're going to have to guide me on this, to make a voice vote or voice approval of reaching out to our assembly people and senator to urge support for the plastics bill that is currently, hopefully, still alive in both the Senate and the Assembly. So I have a letter from the head of PEC. I could read that, or we could. I'll need some guidance.
Right.
here.
I think it's just getting council consent for there to be a letter that's signed by myself, and I was going to offer Council President Crummiller, yourself, and Sophie Glovier. So the four of us could draft something and co-sign it on behalf of the council, saying that we support statewide ban on plastic bags and styrofoam
On single-use plastic bags.
Single-use plastic bags, thank you.
So,
Right.
yeah, so do we have that? Does the rest of the council support that?
The council's gone on record before, I think,
Okay,
on
okay.
supporting state legislation.
Okay. Just so everybody knows that we're going to
Right.
do that. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I see nods from everybody. Okay, good. Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Cohen? Mr. Cohen, do you have any reports?
I do not.
Mr. Miller?
Are very brief, quick. On behalf of Human Services, their holiday drive, thanks to the generosity of many individuals in our community, the wishes of 306 children were fulfilled this year. So thank you to everyone who contributed. And then just quickly, on behalf of the Youth Advisory Committee and Civil Rights Commission, they had very productive goal-setting session this month, and they're looking forward to presenting to Mayor and Council next month. Thank you.
No, I just want to take a couple minutes just to recognize Camille Bloomberg, who's a longtime public servant here in Princeton, member of the Corner House staff, and board member on the Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance, who's retiring after over 2 decades of faithful service to our wonderful town. I enjoyed working with her as the liaison to Corner House and to the Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance. I just want to publicly wish her well in her future endeavors as she enters retirement.
Terrific. Is his mic working?
Want me to say it again? Oh, sure. Thanks. Yeah, well, I just wanted to publicly recognize Camille Bloomberg. She's given over 2 decades of faithful service to the Princeton community as a staff member of Corner House and also as a board member of the Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance. And so I just want to wish her well as she enters her new endeavors as she enters retirement. The reason why I had this off was so everyone wouldn't hear me sneezing and blowing my nose over here. But I forgot to turn it back on. So
Thank you.
It's on the record now.
Okay. And I have one report, as everybody probably knows, as part of its anti-immigrant and anti-refugee efforts. Trump administration issued Executive Order 13888 in September, requiring local jurisdictions to affirmatively indicate consent for refugee resettlement to continue in their jurisdictions. So Princeton is a member of Cities for Action. It's the agency that makes us a welcoming, part of the Welcoming America, Welcoming Communities Network. And they're calling on mayors and county executives to express their support for refugees and show that our local jurisdictions will remain welcoming. And as part of this effort, mayors and county executives are being encouraged to submit written consent to allow refugee resettlement in their jurisdictions before the end of this calendar year. So far, 20 governors, including our governor, Phil Murphy, and 52 local leaders across the country have indicated consent to allow refugee resettlement to continue in their jurisdictions. And I know council's gone on record on this several times before, but just since this request came a little bit at the last minute, I want to make sure that there's consent for me to sign on to this and take an affirmative stance that we are a welcoming community for our refugees. Excellent. Okay. And are there any other reports from staff?
I just had one update. Due to the weather tomorrow, our contractor on Mount Lucas Road will not be working. So the road will be open and fueling as well will be open. Hoping that they may be able to do an extended day on Wednesday instead to be able to get more work done. Looking for an 8:30 to 5 o'clock closure.
And are we communicating that to Community Park School? Are they able to get that word out to the parents there?
We sent it to them. I didn't get a confirmation back from them, but I sent it to the principal and all of the administrative staff, the office secretary.
Oh, great. Okay. If there's no other reports, we'll move on to resolutions. The first is 19378, resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with WSP USA Incorporated for a traffic engineering study of up to 11 intersections in the vicinity of US Route 206, Valley Road, Ewing Street, and North Harrison Street for a cost not to exceed $79,409.69.
I'll move it.
Moved by Ms. Krummeller.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Cohen, and this really comes out of two of the earlier reports we heard. Is there any discussion on this? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Ms. Niedergang.
Sorry, I just had a couple of questions. The bid calls for the use of, 20 automatic traffic recorders. The company provides their own, or they use ours?
They have a subcontractor that provides it. We don't have any.
Okay, I just was wondering if all of ours would be devoted to that task. And then there was a phrase in there, street light OD analysis. Is that possibly like looking at the use of, is that enhancing lighting, or does that have a completely different, what does it mean, and as part of their effort can they look at lighting, or would that be a completely separate issue?
I will get back to you. I think OD is origin destination, but I will double check that for you.
Okay.
And regarding street lighting, I think we should keep that separate.
Okay.
We can
Well, just while they're working on these and studying this issue, it seems it would be something that would factor into.
We can have that going in a separate track, I think,
Okay.
with municipal staff instead.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or discussion on the resolution? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next item is 19379, resolution authorizing the award of a construction contract in the amount of $740,340.95 to JC Contracting Incorporated, subject to concurrence by the New Jersey Department of Transportation for the fiscal year 2014 Safe Routes to School Grant Project entitled Pedestrian Upgrades to 2 Harrison Street Traffic Signals, federal project number TAP 2239300. If I read that correctly or not, but is there a motion to approve?
So
Moved by Ms. Krummeller,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Cohen. Any comments on this? I just want to say again, congratulations to Ms. Stockton. Thank you for securing this funding for Princeton. Ms.
Sorry,
Niedergang, did you have a
I
question?
have one small question on this. So I noticed in the contract and I think we've discussed this before, there's a requirement for American iron and steel in there. Given the current international situation, would you anticipate that this is going to lead to delays in the project? Or I remember talking with you previously, and you were saying that it was very hard to find adequate supplies domestically. So I wonder if since that conversation, the situation has changed. Or
We don't anticipate it for the work that's in this contract. Our issue, I think at the time, was more related to some of the sanitary sewer work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 19380, resolution authorizing a 1-year contract with the option for 2 1-year extensions with Central Jersey Waste and Recycling Incorporated for the not-to-exceed amount of $566,730 for solid and bulky waste collection, removal, and disposal services commencing on February 1st, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Quinn, seconded by Ms. Krummeller. Any discussion?
Just how much is this additional than what we were paying last year? Anyone?
It's approximately $30 a ton additional.
Okay.
And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think our tonnage was around 400 a month. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
For the sake of the public, it means $30 per ton.
Yes, correct.
Thanks.
Yeah, and there's, I think there's There's probably one of the goals for the Public Works Committee for next year is going to be looking at waste across the board, including this, which is waste sent to landfill, because the costs are going up for everything. And I think it is going to bear a close look. This contract lasts for 1 year, and going out to bid is not a trivial exercise. So oftentimes it takes at least 6 months to try to figure out what our constraints are, put the bid package together, put it out there, and have enough time. So this gets us through the next year while we work on what our options might be. All right. Any other discussion on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 19381. Resolution authorizing sale of a used biodigester, 624 composter, conveyor, mixer by sealed bid. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Krummeller. Yeah, just let me get it on the table first. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Niedergang. And Mr. DeShield, do you just want to give a brief explanation of what this is? And then if there's questions from council, we can do that, and then we'll open it up if there's other comments.
Sure. The resolution before you is a resolution that will authorize me to develop a notice of bidders to actually do a public auction for the biodigester and the mixer. What will happen is I will develop that notice of bidders. As part of that notice to bidders, it will be sold to the bidder with the highest bid price. But what we will put in the notice to bid is what our intentions are is for the person bidding on this. We can't guarantee it, but we can at least let them know our intentions are for them to be, we'd like them to be local and like them to be available to, if we wanted to, use their facility to process our waste. So that will be part of the bid. We expect we expect the auction to be sometime in January after we go work through some logistics.
Ms. Niedergang?
Is part of this process to have the subcommittee that's been dealing with this look at the bid, the notice to bid? Is that, is this better? Sorry. As part of the process, will there be an opportunity for the subcommittee that's been dealing with this to look at the notice to bid before it goes out?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. All right. And one more question, which is, I didn't realize that there was going to be a minimum bid, which I see that there is. So what happens if we don't hit that point? Do we just do another bid without the minimum, or what's our fallback position?
Our fallback,
here?
we can always, either if we don't have any bidders, or we can reject any bid for any reason and go back again. So what we'll do is we'll put this out and we'll see what happens.
Are there any other questions? Would you like to comment?
Yeah, so food waste is the biggest.
And you have to identify yourself for
What?
you have to please identify yourself for the minutes.
John McConaughey, 20 Longway, Hopewell, New Jersey. So food waste is the biggest polluter in the United States, and many of the things that contribute to the pollution of food waste is not controllable at the local level. One of the things that is food waste. And this biodigester is a good opportunity to bridge the private and the public sector, because it's a complicated problem. And the public sector has issues with getting things done, and the private sector has proven not to be a very good steward. And so this biodigester is the perfect bridge to combine public with private to try to solve one of the big issues that we have as a community. And so that being said, that the biodigester, when it was given to Princeton, I think was given with the understanding that Princeton would try to solve that problem and be part of that solution. They could have auctioned it off and probably gotten more for it than they got from Princeton. But I think the understanding from the previous owner was that Princeton was looking for a way to be part of the solution. And I think that if you do this via RFQ versus a closed bid, not only do you still maintain the flexibility of being part of the solution, I actually think you'll get a higher price than if you do it as a closed bid. You lose all the flexibility if you don't do it as an RFQ and you're doing it as an auction. Hopefully it'll stay local, but there's no strings attached. If you do it as an RFQ, it can stay local with whatever constraints or requirements you want to make Princeton part of the solution, as opposed to the public that tends not to be a very good steward. And I know personally that I would be very interested in working with the town. I will also be interested in doing it as a closed bid. So quite frankly, from my standpoint, I'd rather it be a closed bid if I'm looking at it from a business solution, because there's no strings attached. I can do whatever with it. If I get it for a good enough price, I can sell it to somebody else. But I think as a community, it would be better to consider it as an RFQ.
Thank you. Did you just want to, Mr. Shield, you just want to explain the subcommittee's reasoning for doing it this way at this point?
As everyone's aware, initially we initially looked at doing a public-private partnership. We had a subcommittee which included members of council, staff, some members of our boards and commissions. And we sat down. We also met with some of the potential farmers in the areas just to see how this process could work. After reviewing the process, the complicated nature of the process made that a very difficult choice in terms of building an RFP that would actually, an RFQ that would actually work. So the committee's decision was to auction it and trying to get someone to actually still is local to actually try to provide that. So we're not giving up on the idea. We just can't do it in the way that we initially thought we could.
Are there any questions or comments from council? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the resolution passes unanimously. Next is, where are we? 19382, resolution authorizing the award of a construction contract to James R.
Iron Tile
Incorporated in the not to exceed amount of $199,999.00. Thanks for the 99-cent discount for drainage improvements at 120 Wynett Road. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Kremler and seconded by Mr. Quinn. Are there any comments or questions on this one? No? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 19383, purchase of a ProTech protective helmets under New Jersey State Contract 17-Fleet-00787 in the amount of $24,450. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Kremler.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Fraga. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 19385, resolution authorizing a one-year contract extension with Stouts Charter Service Incorporated for the operation and maintenance of the Freebie Community Shuttle Service from January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020, in the not-to-exceed amount of $129,356.56. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Krummeler.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Niedergang. Any discussion?
I just have one comment. Thank you.
So Eve, you're being quiet tonight. If you just
am I
get right in,
bumping?
everything might get
Okay.
better.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Thank you to Don Mayor Brown of the engineering department for some figures he had given to the Public Transit Committee previously. I just wanted to I'll go on.
Keep going. But I skipped over a resolution, so we'll have to come back to it.
I thought you did.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I just wanted to highlight that although the cost, what we're paying Stouts is about $140,000. If you add in maintenance costs and gas, the total costs for for the freebies, about 185,000, and then there's also a contract which will be coming up, or maybe that's the one we missed. Adds up to a little under 200,000 for the freebie. So I just wanted to get that out there, so we know. I'm very supportive of the freebie, but just want to put all the costs together so that people know what it is. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion or comments on this resolution? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, if we can go back and take up 19384, resolution authorizing a one-year extension of the Crosstown Transportation Contract with Greater Mercer Transportation Management Association for the not-to-exceed amount of $139,984.80 for 2020.
I just wanted to make a comment before. I think that we should have a committee that looks over these numbers on a monthly basis like we do. And I would suggest it goes to the Public Transportation Committee, because right now I believe that the Senior Center manages it, but we pay for it. And so I feel like a council committee or someone should be looking at it, because I know a few years ago we looked at it and I think we made some changes based on what we thought about who was using it. So I just wanted to say that before.
I support that idea.
I think that's a good
great.
suggestion. Yeah, thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Krumler, seconded by Ms. Niedergang. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 19386, resolution authorizing the municipality of Princeton to acquire 237 North Harrison Street, formerly the PFARS building, and execute documents related to the closing of title. And we can take that in conjunction with the next one, 19387, resolution authorizing payment of funds in the amount of $605,000 for the purchase of 237 North Harrison Street, the former PFARS building.
I'll move it.
Moved by Ms. Krumler and seconded by Mr. Williamson. Any discussion or questions on these resolutions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the two resolutions pass unanimously. And next is 19389, resolution supporting the creation of public parking for 394 Ridgeview Road, open space acquisition.
I'll move it.
It's been moved by Ms. Krumler.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, you should come up to the mic. You have to come up to the mic. I know, I'm sorry. I know you've been waiting here.
Wendy Mager, Friends of Princeton Open Space. I just wanted to comment, the resolution contemplates that the engineering department will prepare a cost estimate for creating this parking. And there's a slight discrepancy between the resolution, which refers to 2 or 3 parking spaces, which is what Green Acres told us they would like to see, and Ms. Stockton's memo. So I just wanted to emphasize the point that it would be most useful to focus the cost estimate on 2 or 3 parking spaces rather than 4, and that's it.
Okay. We're sort of in the middle of voting, so why don't we go back, and I know it's been moved and seconded, so all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the resolution passes unanimously. Thanks, and thanks, Wendy, for getting us over the finish line on this one. All right, now we come to the consent agenda, which contains items of a routine nature passed by single vote. Are there any items anybody would like removed from the consent agenda? All right, and seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cohen, seconded by Ms. Krumler. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda passes unanimously. And now we are at the time when we can reopen public comment. So we'll go back to the sign-up list from earlier. And I know some folks have had to leave, but bear with me. Can you see what that says? Is Diane Pederin? All right, Patty Murray. Patricia Feeney. Right, all right. Well, Chuck McEnroe, you're next.
Good evening. It's kind of intimidating to be on this side of the lens, but initially I came here to talk about how the ripple effect of one show can make, and you've heard enough of that. Then I was going to talk about my personal experience being a volunteer, and now I have a video production company, which gives me something to do in my life 2.0, okay? And I'm not going to talk about that. My observation, though, okay, you have all these people saying the value of the station. You guys have attested to the value of the station by previous council members, mayors who are on the board of it, have appeared on shows. So we all recognize it's the value. So here we are sharing the same value in this. Then we have this thing, how do you fund it? Okay, and that's the obstacle. And I know you guys have a daunting responsibility to do that. I know that because when in my previous life in corporate America, I had American Express. I had budgets of millions of dollars that I had to make decisions. How do you please all the people? It's tough. It's really, really tough. Based on my observation, I think the best solution, or at least a road to, is it seems like we're throwing away the baby with the bathwater. Okay, and maybe there can be a progressive thing. Quite honestly, you say years ago, you've been telling them, be self-sufficient, get funding. Quite honestly, my observation is they don't have the talent to do that. If they had funds with a directive to get people in that specialize, just like you guys have subcommittees, you bring in consultants, if they had the funds to do that, and then some sort of timetable where the funds are reduced. And I don't want to get into that because I'm done with all that kind of negotiating, what have you. But if there could be something that's done, okay? And all I'm suggesting is maybe, reassess, and I hope the climate of the negotiation hasn't turned into adversarial, and everyone realizes it's the money, it's out there, it's not between two groups of people. So that's all I had to say, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Natasha Sherman. And somebody, Shivai? All right, well, that's the end of the list. So anybody else who would like to speak, I welcome you up to the mic. And if you can just say your name and then also say your address. And I'm going to be writing it down because we don't have you on the list. So just if you speak slowly so we can make sure it gets in the minutes correctly. So your name, address, and then your comment.
Good evening, Mayor and esteemed council. I am Alfred Tardell, and the address is 27103 Osprey Way, Princeton Junction. Sure. Good evening, Mayor and esteemed council. I am Alfred Tardell. The address is 27103 Osprey Way. I am Alfred Tardell, a member of Princeton TV and the producer of More Talk TV, a socially conscious media platform that is currently promoting the awareness of the Census 2020. It is through Princeton TV that we have been able to broadcast the testimony that I gave before New Jersey Complete Count Commission. Since it is the position of this council that Princeton taxpayers are due some tax relief, I am therefore prepared to pledge $250,000 of my future reparations for the year 2020 to offset the taxpayers' burden. These monies will come from the private sources within Princeton. I think this is a fair proposition since a former taxpayer and Princeton professor, Albert B. Dodd, owned a slave as late as 1840, one of the last men in the state to do so. Princeton University, which is a direct benefactor from slavery and an asset to Princeton, New Jersey, has a dormitory that exists on its campus in the name of Albert B. Dodd. Although Princeton University has set aside approximately $27 million for its part in slavery. It's my hope that Princeton, New Jersey taxpayers, as well as this council, will support our efforts to campaign and solicit for private funding to help continue our efforts to promote the awareness of a complete census count, so that those who live in Princeton, New Jersey are aware that the terms Negro, colored, black, or African American are terms that allude to slavery. And we hope this township will support my forthcoming resolution to remove these vestiges of slavery from being used on Princeton University campus, as well as Princeton's public schools and in your local government documents. I come in peace and I leave in peace. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm David Goldfarb, 12 Charlton Street. You may recall, Mayor, that you asked me to come tonight to give a report on SBRSA, or maybe you don't recall because
Yeah,
I did not make the agenda.
That's okay, but we welcome your report, and I'm sorry that, that didn't, but
Not a problem.
we're welcome. Yeah, please.
So I'm here actually in two capacities. One as Princeton's representative to the SBRSA board. Stony Brook Regional Sewerage Authority treats Princeton's sewage as well as sewage from 5 other municipalities in the region. Princeton pays about $4 million for its share of the cost of treating sewage. And I'll start with what is probably highest in your mind, and that is what the change in that figure is going to be for the budget year that is approaching, and it's going to be about $32,000 of increase, which is significantly less than it was last year. You may recall that I was here last year defending the large increase. The cost that Princeton pays has several components. One is Princeton's share of the Stony Brook budget, which is roughly a third. Another is the debt service adjustment that is part of our service agreement among all the municipalities when Stony Brook Regional Sewerage Authority was created. The debt service adjustment was a method of repaying the early investors, mostly Princeton, for the money put into building the system. And it's not unlike a connection fee that we have now for new connections to the system. The debt service adjustment, according to our service agreement, went out of existence on November 30th, 2015, but there's a phase-out period that will end in 2022. So each year between now and 2022, the amount that Princeton will get from the debt service adjustment is going to decrease, as it did from last year to this year. And after 2022, it's going to disappear entirely. And this is not inconsequential because in the coming fiscal year, the amount of that debt service adjustment is $428,000. So in 2020, it's $428,000. 2021, it's $325,000. 2022, it's $273,000, and then it is gone. So in 2024 or 2023, there's going to be an increase of $273,000 in the amount that Princeton will pay to Stony Brook. And between now and then, there are going to be increases from the debt service adjustment because it's going to be decreasing over that period of time. Now, the other factor is Princeton's flow, projected versus actual. There will be a refund coming that will offset what otherwise would have been a larger increase because Princeton's flow in the year that just ended on November 30th was less than it had been projected to be. And this obviously changes from year to year. The flow increases and decreases depending largely on the amount of rainfall. That flow is somewhat in Princeton's control. You know, low flow shower heads are great, low flow toilets are great, but the biggest factor in reducing the amount of Princeton's flow is the flow that should never be there in the first place. You know, for thousands of years, the rain fell on Princeton, and on what is now Princeton, flowed through the ground and on the surface into the rivers that we now know as Stony Brook and Millstone, and went out to the ocean, and everything was fine. We now take over 1 million gallons a day, and I'm not exaggerating, it's over 1 million gallons a day of rainfall that falls from the sky, and we put it into our sewer pipes, pump it to the Stony Brook Regional Sewerage Authority to be treated, pump it through the treatment process, which is very energy intensive, dump chemicals into it, and then discharge it back into the Millstone River where it goes eventually to the ocean. Anybody who cares at all either about cost or sustainability should realize that this is not a good thing. And the reason that we have this problem is that our sewers have been neglected for decades, despite me being here periodically and arguing to the contrary. What I can tell you is if our roads were in the shape that our sewer pipes are in, nobody would be serving more than one term on the council because people would be outraged. The sewers are just as important a part of our infrastructure as the roads are, probably more important, and they need to be fixed. And they need to have money spent on them to be fixed, and they need somebody to identify where the leaks are and coordinate their being repaired. Now, I'm pleased that Mr. DeShield has told us that there's a proposal to hire people to do this. That's a very good place to start, a necessary place to start, but you're going to have to come up with the cash to do these repairs. And if you don't come up with the cash to do these repairs, you're going to be paying Stony Brook to treat clean water, and you cannot face your constituents with a straight face and tell them that you care about sustainability, because it's an enormous waste. So that is my message. I could go on and tell you other things about Stony Brook, like it's complying with all of its permits and being operated responsibly. But the message that I really want to leave you with tonight is that you got to come up with the dough and the effort and fix our neglected sewers, and you have to start doing it right away.
All right, so thank you for that report, and I apologize for probably giving you PTSD to make you stay here for so long to give it, but we really appreciate.
Just brought him back to the good old days.
Yeah,
when he
that's
was
what I
on
was going to
council.
say. No, but seriously, we really appreciate everything that you've done to help let us know what's happening with the sewers, and we do have a commitment to hiring for that position, and yes, and has it been posted already or not yet? And it hasn't, okay. But I know it's come through personnel, and there's a commitment to post it soon. So I think there's a commitment not just to post it, but to fund it and hire someone.
Right, and that's, as I said, that's the start.
Right.
But that's not inconsequential. That's a person or two people, and I know that you care very much and consider those decisions carefully. But the real money is in doing the work.
Right.
And unlike when you fix the roads, people are pleased that the road has been fixed, but there's no financial return. When you fix the sewers, two things. One is, it's not just the taxpayers who pay for it. It's also Princeton University, because they pay sewer rates like everybody else. Right. And the other is that when the sewer pipes get repaired and we reduce the flow, we get money back because we pay less to Stony Brook because our flow is reduced.
Right.
So the money looks the same in the budget when you award a contract for sewer repairs, but the fact is that different people are paying, and everybody who's paying is going to get some of that money back starting right away. I mean, starting the next year. Right. Some of that money comes back.
And I know Ms. Krummeler's reported on the system of putting in the sensors so that we can better direct resources to fix the problems where we're seeing the most leakage and, trying to be smart about devoting resources that way.
Right. It's a scientific, I mean, not scientific, but it's a logical process. We know the topology of Princeton. We know where the water is, which is through most of Princeton, but not everywhere. And we know where the pipes are old. Focus your efforts there. Try to identify exactly where the leaks are and fix it. But frankly, the system is so decayed that you could pick a random spot and make a significant improvement. I'm not suggesting that that's the approach that should be taken.
I guess I'm curious whether you have any sense, order of magnitude, sort of what the payback period is. In other words, the amount of money that we're going to save.
Right. So Princeton is roughly 1/3 of the flow at Stony Brook, and we pay $4 million a year. We should be about 1/4 or less. So that gives you some idea. And that's not even, I mean, I think that's easily achievable. So let's say if we pay 10% less, that's $400,000 a year. And that number is going to increase. And there's another factor, which is that eventually the River Road plant is going to have to be expanded. That's going to be enormously expensive. It's going to happen someday. If Princeton can reduce the amount of the flow, that postpones that huge investment in expanding the plant. So the numbers are big. The numbers certainly justify millions of dollars worth of investment with a reasonable return. But you can't look at it only that the sewer should be fixed in order to get that return, and you should only invest the money if you can get the financial return. There's also the fact that it's part of our infrastructure, and it obviously needs attention, and it deserves as much attention as the roads and the sidewalks and the buildings and everything else that you spend money on without expecting any financial return.
All right. Thank you very much. And
Thank
again,
you.
Apologies. And
I hope when I'm
late.
back here next year, and
Yes.
I'll come whether I'm invited or not.
Yes. I'll put you first on the agenda too.
There'll be something to point to that really indicates that significant progress has been made. And I recognize that we had a year with some disruption. So, I'm willing to excuse 2019 because of that disruption, but I'm not going to excuse 2020.
Right. Well, and also I think that, this is something that Citizens Finance Advisory Committee puts out a newsletter every year with the tax bill. And if we can start tracking, if there's a ways to start tracking investments we make with flow reduction or impacts on the flow, I think that's the kind of chart that would be really useful for that newsletter and be a way to let people know, help make that case of why that's important investment and how it pays off.
Right, and also in our sustainability discussions, this really should be a topic that comes
agreed.
up. It's not big, sewers are ignored because people flush, goes away. That's the end of their thoughts about our sewer system. But when I hear discussions about sustainability, I always think this is the first thing I think of, and it is a sustainability issue.
Yep. Agreed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do actually have one question. So we have, forgive me if I'm using the wrong words, we have like a unitary system. We don't have a...
No, we don't. No, we don't.
What do we have?
We have a separate sanitary sewer and storm sewer system.
Okay. And
they don't, I hope, they don't cross anywhere.
Okay.
The extraneous water that comes into our sanitary sewer system comes mostly from groundwater that leaks into the system. A small part of it comes through manholes in the streets. But no, we do not have a unitary system.
Okay. So when we're talking about replacing the sewers, are we talking about just the sanitary sewers, both?
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
What's your priority, the sanitary?
So storm sewers, if storm sewers leak, the water goes into the ground, or the groundwater goes into the sewer, and the storm sewer, and eventually it finds its way into the rivers where it belongs.
Okay.
That's not as much of a problem as what I'm talking about, which is water leaking into the sanitary sewer system where it gets treated, pumped and treated.
Right.
And we have to pay. Storm sewers are also part of our infrastructure. They're an important part of our infrastructure, and they also need to be maintained. So actually, when we in the PSOC have been talking about this, we've been talking about having people on board hired by the municipality who can address both. Because they certainly both need to be cleaned. Storm sewers need to be cleaned because if they're clogged, then everything backs up and you have flooded roadways. And they need to be maintained as well. There is no payback for fixing storm sewers, but again, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be fixed. They should be fixed. They should be maintained, and they should be maintained at an acceptable level. My focus is on sanitary sewer because in addition to them having to be maintained, there's also a financial return from fixing them.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Are there any other people like to speak as part of public comment? Okay, that's fine. Just if you could say your name and address.
My name is Thomas Florek, Florek. I'm honored to be speaking before you all. For those of you who don't know me, I am speaking as a long-time volunteer at the Arts Council of Princeton, where I run the Cafe Improv program, which is the music, poetry stuff that people sign up and play. And we've been doing that. We've won national awards, state awards, local awards. It is our, we like to say that it is important for the health and welfare of the community as a whole to have a good way to share ideas and the arts. We totally believe that. We're all volunteer, and I am totally not into budgets and not into money, and every dollar that comes to Cafe Improv gets whooshed away to the Arts Council itself. And all I want to say is that I just hope this whole, we're the oldest show on one of the oldest shows on Princeton TV. We used to be on in the 90s when we were on twice a day, every day. So the show is very well put together, and we do a great job. Anyway, so did I say that I'm a volunteer for 30 years? Did I say that? Anyway, I just want to say that I hope it all works out to everybody's satisfaction, and we're all happy. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Raymond DeVoe. I go by Scythe. I'm on the board of Princeton Community Television. I'm a member of Princeton Community Television, but want to talk to you mostly about being a resident living at 422 Snowden Lane, right here in Princeton. I don't want to lob any grenades about where we are with regarding the stalled negotiations. I just want to speak for a moment about what a potentially huge loss it would be if the community gem like PCTV were to have to shut its doors after 20 years of providing so much of significant value. As a resident, it still astonishes me that the roughly $8 per resident franchise fee payments from the cable subscribers, which is intended to fund PCTV, would be eliminated in the name of tax relief at the expense of this renowned public access station. It's one of the last remaining in the state of New Jersey, and it's one of a continuously shrinking number left in the United States. To paint a It's a Wonderful Life picture of a if PCTV never was, all of you on council would never have reached your largest single event audience were it not for the partnership with the League of Women Voters and their annual council and mayoral debate, their annual council and regular mayoral debate broadcasts on PCTV. Dozens of not-for-profit organizations would not have benefited from PCTV's Community Partners Project, in which selected organizations receive hands-on instructions in video and editing, and in order to produce a featurette about their organization. And of course, hundreds and hundreds of regular citizens of the community would never have had the opportunity to learn how to operate a video camera, much less a fully functional video production studio, which enables them to share their interests and their passions with other members of the community. We're not broadcasting Wayne's World here. And I'm not going to sit here and say that every show that is broadcast across the wires is going to appeal to every single member of our community. But as a father of a 20-year-old and a father of a 22-year-old, when Anthony Uva's Secrets of College Planning comes on, I take out my notebook. There's cooking shows, yoga, training, an amazing variety of broadcast material that comes out in which the content is truly as diverse as our wonderful Princeton community. The one thing I have been perhaps most proud of to be a part of recently was a forum on immigration about 2 years ago. The panel discussion featured immigration lawyers, a Princeton professor, even a priest, and it lasted about an hour and a half, after which audience members got the opportunity to ask questions. Councilwoman Fraga could perhaps back me up on this, but take a cold heart not to choke up when a 15-year-old, fully documented high schooler attended without his parents, who were undocumented and afraid to come. He stood up with a tear in his eye and he said, "What can I do?" The high schooler should not have had to worry about whether his family might be ripped from him in the middle of the night. The immigration lawyer gave him her card, gave him a hug, as did the rest of the parents, and he got help and he got answers. Right? That's a community I want to be part of. It's a community that helps others in trouble. It's a community I would gladly contribute $8 to be able to help someone in need and give them answers. In conclusion, I want to simply call upon an ancient proverb that is posted in one of the classrooms at the high school where I substitute teach, right here in Princeton, and it says, "Tell me, and I forget. Show me, and I'll remember. Involve me, and I'll understand." Ladies and gentlemen of council, Madam Mayor, there can be no greater way to understand the interests and the passions of our fellow community members and citizens than to involve them with the means and broadcast their interests and their passions to the rest of us in the community so that we in turn may better learn, better remember, and better understand. I hope we can make some progress going forward in the new year.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Okay.
Good evening. I'm Lou Goldstein. I'm chair of the Board of Trustees for Princeton Community TV. And I want to
We
first
can't hear
wish-
you, so you have to speak right into the mic.
Okay.
And you just name and address for the record, too, please.
Sure. Lou Goldstein, chair of the Board of Trustees, Princeton Community TV. We can go by 1 Monument Drive or we can go by Greaves Place in Cranford. First of all, I want to extend holiday.
I'm sorry, we didn't catch your address there, Lou.
29 Greaves Place, Cranford.
Okay.
First, I want to extend best wishes for the holidays to everyone here and their families. And I give you a lot of credit. It's been a long night, a long meeting, but as the recently retired assistant superintendent of the Princeton schools for 20 years, I know these meetings. I know I sat in with them with Councilman Quinn on a couple times when he was on the school board. So I just want to thank both Council President Crumiller and Councilman Quinn for your service on behalf of not just Princeton TV, but many Princeton residents. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Lou.
Yeah, I know. We've had a lot of conversations over the years, and it all goes down well. I don't want to have to rehash everything, but I did have a prepared speech, and so I want to point out a couple of the highlights so that everybody who may have tuned in a little bit late catches the full impact of what everybody else has said. And they've said it much more eloquently than me and with much more passion. So please, if you could just, my voice is pretty monotone, so if you could just bear with me for a little bit, we'll be okay. Princeton Community TV and Media Center is a nonprofit organization that's existed for 23 years. Going back further to the mid-'80s, it was initially launched as TV 30 and was created through the hard work of residents and members of the governing bodies of Princeton Borough and Princeton Township. Princeton TV provides the Princeton community with programming of interest that is not otherwise available through the local cable programming television services. Shows are now broadcast to a potential viewing audience of over 100 million via our online website, through Vimeo, through Facebook, through Roku, through Apple TV, and now Amazon Fire Stick. We just learned that we are the only public access station in the world that has been selected by Amazon to be on Amazon Fire Stick as a public access television station. Our Princeton TV.org website averages 95,000 hits per month. People are interested in viewing the unique educational and informative programs offered by the station, which reflects positively upon this governing body as well as the residents and town of Princeton. Princeton TV is funded by cable franchise fees. The lights are going out, huh? Not taxpayer monies. The franchise fees come from Comcast and Verizon, and cable companies by law are required to donate a portion of their revenues, usually around 3% or more of cable subscriber fees. Princeton TV is not part of this municipal budget, except for the $100,000 in cable franchise fee revenue that the municipality puts in its budget every year and approves by ordinance. As been said before, we've been trying to reach an agreement with the town for a successor agreement to the one that expired in December 2018 for the last year. Our last formal meeting was April 1st, and it ended, and we hope will continue shortly, when we feel it's time for the parties to return to the bargaining table and try to come up with a creative solution to the differences that we have right now. We totally understand where the council and mayor are coming from as far as the monies. I think you understand where we're coming from, but this is Princeton, and we come up with creative solutions that others try to emulate. So hopefully we can do that in the near future. The station, Scythe mentioned something very interesting. He basically talked about It's a Wonderful Life. And I think, given this holiday season, it's very appropriate that we talk about what it would look like if Princeton TV did not exist in the future, or existed where it could not meet its operating goals. We have already laid off one full-time employee. I listened tonight and I heard that we have a budget of $500,000. I don't know where that number comes from, but it is not a true number. I listened tonight and heard that we have not done fundraising. That is not true. We've been fundraising for over 5 years, because in each year we have basically we have donated back $10,000 in each year in the last 3 years of the money that's been allocated to us. We are charged $18,000 a year, which comes from cable franchise fees that goes back to the township. So basically, if you look at that, $18,000 a year, which is $54,000, and the $10,000 each year, which is another $30,000, that's $84,000 that's come back to the township. The station works with a lengthy list of nonprofit organizations, and some of those organizations requested to be named tonight. Whether it's the League of Women Voters, who you've already heard for tonight, to Princeton University, to the Princeton Public Schools, to the Witherspoon Jackson Development Corporation, and to the Princeton Theological Seminary, to the Institute for Advanced Studies, to Princeton Community Area Foundation, to the Latin American Legal Defense and Education Fund, to the Elm Court Senior and Low Income Affordable Housing, to environmental groups such as Sustainable Princeton and Sea Change Conversations, to various literacy organizations helping students to read, write, and understand. All these partnerships and programs would no longer continue to thrive and exist if PCTV did not receive adequate funding for the future. The station provides student internships to Princeton Public School students. We provide internships to other college students. We provide internships to Princeton University students. These could no longer exist. Classes in video production and digital media, including podcasting, video camera, audio, lighting, editing, on-air presence, social media, photography, green screen, and other special classes for students, adults, seniors, and veterans would be eliminated. Princeton students of diverse backgrounds and limited financial needs would not have an opportunity to learn the media arts craft, to be mentored by professionals in their areas, or be able to list this experience on their resumes for colleges or for future employees. At a time of disappearing local media outlets, the station provides a unique outlet that will only become more important as other local sources of information dry up. We're not averse to fundraising. We've been fundraising for over the last 5 years. And we encourage those who wish to donate to us to do so and to go online at princetontv.org and donate. We're not above asking right now for donations. And we're not below recognizing that the time has come for Princeton TV to make fundraising a primary issue. But we need a transition period in which we can agree upon to move forward in a manner which is both beneficial to the town and to Princeton TV and to the residents that it serves. So we're asking you tonight to return to the negotiating table with the negotiations team. Let's be on the right side of history. So when future governing bodies look back and see the positive legacy and tradition we have prioritized and preserved, let it be tonight be the first night that we jointly and collectively move forward, as did those who were here in the beginning almost 30 years ago when they decided to form a cable local access channel so that the residents of Princeton and beyond could be informed on a regular basis 24/7. Thank you very much and have a great night.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak as part of public comment? All right. Mr. Quinn, before you speak, I just want to, if there's nobody else who wants to speak as part of public comment, then I'm going to close public comment. We'll bring it back to council for any concluding remarks, and then we can adjourn the meeting. But Mr. Quinn, I'm going to give you the last word.
Well, I'd welcome anyone else from council to speak too. I think that when Mr. DeShield cited $500,000, that was the amount that was in reserve. And I'm curious why none of that appears to have been spent on development. We have nonprofits in town who make that investment and reap the reward of that. You can see a big building right outside here that was mostly, they hired a development director and raised private funds to build a public good. It pains me to sit here. Tom Florick, who just left, has been a friend of mine for more than 25 years. It's not that we don't value the programming on TV 30, but you also heard Mr. Goldfarb talk about the millions of dollars that taxpayers are going to have to pay for sewer repairs. It strikes me that this is my understanding is that the previous negotiations also talked about an off-ramp to public funding that would be met by private funding. So It does pain me to say this, but I think that some of the reserve needs to be spent on a serious development effort, and that's all. If that's the final word, then.
Well, I want to kind of second what you're saying about the fundraising, because I was involved on the committee, and ever since, and it was long ago, that the council was sending a strong message, raise money. We did say we're ratcheting down your funding. We're going to take away your funding. We've been saying this for years, and apparently the station has not been able to attract funding, and I think that says a lot. Unfortunately, it hasn't been able to attract funding in the community. That's all. That's all I want to say.
Is there anybody who has any final comments? Okay. Yes, but it's like, I mean, I close public comment. I will reopen it just for you. But then it's like, it's icy on the roads outside. We have people who have to travel a long distance, and I don't want anybody getting hurt. So you can be the last comment, and then I'd like to adjourn the meeting.
I'd like to respond to what Tim and Jenny said. So about 3 years ago, when we entered the contract, you were deducting funds by $10,000 a year and issuing us to raise that amount of money. And we have been doing that all along. Our fundraising last year was within percentage points of what the library brings in their private funding. And so I don't understand where people are getting this, where we haven't been able to fundraise. I think we have been doing a really good job.
Well, that's great news. And I know the library brings in significant amount of money annually, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
Yeah,
I think
I
that's...
said percentage-wise. Percentage-wise, we're doing...
I see. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, and I know we spent a lot of time at the negotiating table talking with PCTV. It's been frustrating for the municipality also. We put on the table exactly what you're asking for tonight. I don't want to get into the details, but it's... I don't know if there's an appetite to reopen it or not. I mean, I don't think we're going to discuss it up here at open session right now. But I will say we value the work that you do, and it's not about that. It's a question of all of our budgeting priorities, and if we look around the state at what our neighbors are doing and what a lot of your hometowns are doing, it's like we have to make sure that we're doing the best for our residents, and it's not always an easy decision, but we do have to be responsible to the whole community, and I think that's what we're trying to do. And it's also a question of fairness too about how we treat all of our nonprofits. So anyway, I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight, for sticking it out this long. We appreciate what you have to say, and we appreciate the work that you do. And I want to wish everybody a Happy New Year's, and for those that are interested in affordable housing, invite you back on Wednesday evening for our meeting then. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.